Shikuki, start with an Izakaya and make everyone cry. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101 Special Kitchen Utensils, Beach and Serious Blade. Ding dong, successfully signed in once. Ling dong, congratulations to the host for successfully obtaining the new special recipe Phoenix Crystal and the special kitchen tool Beach and Serious Blade. With the departure of Nakari Shinichi and Annie, the system's sign-in rewards also appeared. Let's talk about the Beach and Serious Blade first. As we all know, this is a kitchen knife that belongs to Ren in the Little Master of China. The entire blade of this knife is entirely made of ice. Therefore, when the C-beam is processed, ice gas will be released to fully refrigerate it, thereby achieving the effect of retaining the most delicious taste of the C-beam. In other words, if Zhang Fan had just used the Beach and Serious Blade to process the C-beam, the taste of the whole fresh C-beam would definitely be even better. Then new special recipe, Phoenix Crystal. This dish is actually the same as the Shanglong dumplings last time. Despite the cool name of the dish, it is essentially a dish with bean sprouts and potatoes as the main ingredients. Although the ingredients used are very simple, the preparation is quite difficult. First, remove the head and tail of each mung bean sprout, leaving the whole white, fat and long body. Then stuff the minced meat with seasoning inside and blanch it in boiling water. Just this step, even if you pull it out vigorously from noon to evening, the finished product may only be a small pot, so it consumes a lot of energy and is a waste of time. Finally, the crispy bean sprouts are pieced together to form a phoenix reborn from nirvana. Judging from the visual effect of the finished product, it is particularly shocking. It can be said that this dish not only tests the chef's skill, but also tests the chef's carving, presentation, artistic sense, patience, etc. at the same time. Without extremely high talent and years of hard work, it is absolutely impossible to completely imitate this Phoenix Crystal dish. Very good. With the Beach and Serious Blade, the fresh C-beam mountain is the real finished product. As for Phoenix Crystal, it is a dish that can rival Shanglong dumplings. Today's sign-in rewards are actually good things for Zhang Fan, so he is still a little excited. Finally, he dragged his tired body to wash up, and then fell asleep. At this point, there is nothing more to say about the Izakaya. The next day, as the start of school approaches, the replacement of the old and new top 10 has been completely completed. Therefore, in order to reallocate various resources in the academy and solve various problems of new student enrollment, the Council of 10 Elites was convened again. In fact, as the highest authority in Yuanayu, the 10 heroes of Yuanayu all firmly control and occupy various resources. The only thing they have to do is to consolidate and improve their position through the power in their hands. Therefore, this council meeting is not so much a reshuffle as it is a redistribution of internal resources, and they monopolize all the resources in the academy. But they also rely on their strong abilities to make many important contributions to the development of the entire academy. The most typical one is the 9th seed of the current top 10, Izanadazu. He has worked as a food consultant in various capacities since junior high school. He also took advantage of Tatsuki Academy's various corporate relationships and successfully took over more than 500 cases in just the first year of enrollment. The money earned through business consulting was actually more than the enrollment fee for all students in Tatsuki. Because he had made so many contributions to Yuanayu, he finally got the consent of all the top 10 members and successfully became the 9th seed of the top 10. But one way or another, this model of letting students manage themselves does have major drawbacks. After all, the top 10 students can manage other students, but no one can manage them, not even the commander-in-chief. Naturally, this will cause them to lose any restraint and become lawless. See Yingshi. Why is there another transfer student assessment today? At this time, the second seed of the 10 elites, Kobayashi Ringtong, with round golden eyes, asked Si Yingshi while eating snacks. The number of freshmen recruited this year is smaller than in previous years. Then, there are also some outstanding chefs who are unable to take the entrance examination on time due to various reasons, so another examination for transfer students is held. Facing Kobayashi Gentian, Si Yingshi, who was the first seat, responded obediently, "Let me tell you, those who are truly capable have already applied for Yuanayu, and you won't say that you won't come on time to take the entrance examination, so I think there is no need to hold the transfer student examination." Right. On the side, Teruki Kuiga, who was sitting in the 8th seat, said in a nonchalant manner. You can't say that, right? At least school hasn't started yet, so we'll take advantage of this time to give some opportunities to chefs who still want to apply for Tatsuki. This will allow the number of freshmen this year to reach the standard. While taking care of face, we might also be able to unearth some potential talents from these transfer students. Yes. Wei narrowed her eyes slightly and replied with a chuckle. Alright, don't even argue, Zio. Lin, you will be the assessor for transfer students. After waving his hand to indicate that everyone could calm down, Yingxi once again threw this important task to Xiaolin Ringtong next to him. Why, it's me again, Xiaolin. Gentian was stunned. The buildings rising from the ground are located on the grassy mountainside. The scenery is picturesque, like a fairyland. Here is the best Chaleo cooking school in Neon Country at this moment. At the school gate, there was a young man with red hair and golden eyes. There is a shallow scar on his left eyebrow. He is wearing a long-sleeved shirt with a Yukihira restaurant logo on it and a white cloth towel rolled up in his left hand. It's over. My life is completely over. Me too. I finally had an assessment for transfer students, but I still failed. No, I'm afraid my life is coming to an end. Please, no matter what, I must let my child enter school smoothly. The amount of money is negotiable. Even if it means bankrupting my family, I am willing to do so. So please withdraw my son's assessment score, Yukihira. Soma is about to step into Tatsuki and prepare to take today's transfer student assessment. Looking at the failed chefs at the door, I couldn't help but be stunned when I saw that all of them looked desperate. No. Dad, what kind of academy did you introduce to me? Didn't I tell you, the graduation rate there is less than 10%, and it is the #1 culinary school in Neon Country. The voice on the phone stunned Chuang's-hun again. Chapter 102. The Taste of Hometown. Night. The stars are bright and the wind is gentle when Zhang Fan lit up the advertising sign outside the door. The Izakaya began a new day of business. Choose a fresh river eel, slaughter it on the spot, grill it until the surface of the fish is tightened, brush it with sauce, and finally put it on top of rice to become a bowl of fragrant eel rice. Subsequently just serve. The oil on the golden eel meat kept shining with an alluring luster. It is spread neatly on white rice, with a layer of sauce hanging on the surface of the eel and rice. The whole bowl of eel rice is filled with a unique sophistication of Japanese cuisine. Involuntarily, Tadakoro became excited and immediately divided the bowl of eel rice into 3 portions. The first one is the original eel rice, and the second one is mixed with shredded seaweed, wasabi, chopped green onions, white sesame seeds, and sancho pepper, and mix well with the rice. The last portion is made of soup stock made from eel offal, and then mixed with pickles to make chezuke rice. This way of eating is the so-called 3 ways to eat eel, which is the most popular in Nagoya area. Awesome. This eel is so plump and tender. Also, it always tastes slightly elastic. It has a rich aroma of oil in the mouth, without any fishy smell. In addition, the roasting is drier, and the skin is charred and crispy, which is very fragrant. Although the rice plays a supporting role, it is steamed so that the grains are distinct and has a certain viscosity, allowing the special sauce to penetrate into the rice without taking away the flavor of the eel. Not only does it increase the chewiness in the mouth, but it also complements the plump and tender eel. As soon as she took a bite of eel rice and ate it, Tadakoro was instantly impressed by this local cuisine from Nagoya. She has lived in a fishing port city since she was a child, so eel rice with local characteristics has always been her favorite dish. Shopkeeper, do you know, when I was in the middle school, I joined the local cuisine research association within the school. Our association leader is best at making eel rice, a specialty of the Nagoya area. But in comparison, I feel that the eel rice you make has the most local flavor. Tian Suhu, who came back to his senses immediately, could not help but raise his head slightly and said in admiration, excessive praise. Hearing this, Zhang Fan just smiled softly and replied lightly, poor performance. Is it really because of low IQ? In Zhang Fan's opinion, it depends on the situation. Some people are simply too lazy to learn and some people work very hard but still can't learn well. The latter may be pretending to work hard, or they may, like Tadakoro, slip up at a critical moment. In fact, in the plot of the original work, Tanakoro Zora once overshadowed Nakari Arena, especially during the residential training activities. She impressed seniors such as Dojima-jin and Miki Hinata with her gentle cooking. It even made Shinomiya Kojiro completely wake up and understand that the reason why he was stagnant was that he was too eager for quick success and instant success and could no longer use his gentle side to cook. Certainly the eldest daughter of the Nakari family, who was born into a wealthy family, it is the ceiling of Tatsuki Academy's combat power. So no matter how hard Tesori works, it is naturally impossible to catch up. However, she is different from Arena, who cannot tolerate the slightest doubt from others. There is actually something eye-catching about Yon Moshi's cuisine, and that is, she always considers the health of the diners as much as possible when cooking, and uses her gentleness to convey the value of cooking to everyone. Therefore, Zhang Fan has always had deep pity for this cute, innocent, shy girl who dared to stand up and break through her limits at important moments. Sauce like a bond. Let the rustic rice and gorgeous eel blend together perfectly. The sauce of Neon Country Eel famous shop is made according to its own secret recipe, filtering out impurities and adding new ingredients day after day. The sauce used in Zhang Fan's bowl of eel rice must have been secretly prepared by himself, and the sauce he prepared can perfectly bring out the freshness of the eel and the fragrance of the rice. This is different from the kind of industrial mass-produced sauce that is too sweet, too salty, or too alcoholic, thus covering up the taste of the eel and rice itself. Anyway, this bowl of eel rice gradually, Tian-su, whose memories of his hometown were brought back. So in this mood, she started eating like crazy until the end. She had eaten all 3 different portions of eel rice. Food is so amazing. The more we discover, the more delicious food we discover, and our expectations and curiosity about the world will increase. A few years have passed, and Tadakoro has not been home for a long time. So the eel rice made by her mother can only be stored in her memory. The only thing that is difficult to let go of is that her current performance in Tatsuki Academy is very unsatisfactory. Perhaps I shouldn't have chosen to come to UNIU in the first place. Thinking about it, as long as she didn't come to Tatsuki Academy to study, her life in the past few years would be that she could have breakfast leisurely without being in a hurry. She could also sleep until she woke up naturally without worrying about her grades. You can also stay with your mother all the time and run zhuanghuan with her. It's just a choice in life. After all, there is no regret medicine. Now Tian-su, who can only accept it all openly, it's really satisfying. It's been a long time since I've tasted food from my hometown. Licking his mouth, he touched his slightly bulging lower abdomen. Tadakoro, who was still not satisfied, finally couldn't help but sigh. Shopkeeper, your eel rice, just a rice, tastes soft and elastic, especially after absorbing the sauce. It doesn't rot and still maintains a bit of chewiness. The quality of the rice is really great, and the softness and hardness of the steamed rice are just right. Not only does it go well with eel, but even if I eat it alone with a mouthful of white rice without soup, I still feel it's delicious. Seeing Tian-su, who was so obsessed with his cooking, Zhang Fan didn't say anything. He just turned around to make a cup of scented tea, placed it gently in front of her, and then asked, "Are you coming alone tonight? Where are your dorm mates, such as Yoshino Yuki, Sakaki Ryoko, Ishiki K, and so on?" Shopkeeper, I came here on my own, as you know, the first day of school is coming soon. Whether I can pass the assessment of the first class is still unknown, so tonight, I just want to have a good meal of my favorite eel rice here at the Izakaya, and then I plan to say goodbye to you. The owner, Tadakoro, was stunned for a moment, her voice a little helpless. Chapter 103. The tenderness is the strongest weapon. How are you so unsure of yourself? Seeing Tian-su, who was already preparing for the worst, Zhang Fan couldn't help but laugh. Obviously, he had given her all the answers to the test questions in advance. As long as she followed her own method, she would definitely pass the first-class assessment smoothly. As a result, she still behaved as disappointed as in the original work. Have confidence, then. We have to face reality. I entered the higher education department with the last grade. Even if I didn't get kicked out of school in the first class, I was destined to be eliminated quickly in the future. Having said this, Tazo sighed deeply afterwards. She hurriedly took a few sips of the cup of scented tea to relieve herself of some pressure. Tasako, even if you fail now, no one will question you. At least in my heart, the path you are adhering to is absolutely correct. Whether it's bad luck or no one understands you, as long as you always maintain your sincerity and your love for cooking, I think no difficulty will ever faze you. Indeed, in the fiercely competitive Tatsuki Academy, it Must be very difficult for a low-achieving person like you to break through your own mental barriers, and even if there is a breakthrough, there is still a long and bumpy road ahead. But for you, the most precious thing is not your appearance, nor your family background, nor your various strange personalities and talents, but the tenderness that overflows from your heart. This thing may be your strongest weapon to gain a foothold in Yuanyu. After looking at Yan Suahu, Zhang Fan couldn't help but say some philosophical words to enlighten her. Everyone has his own life. Some people are more tortuous, and some people are more stable. Many things cannot be changed at the beginning. But as long as you persevere, maybe the choice you thought was wrong at the beginning will turn out to be right in the end. Moreover, this kind of life experience that is different from others will be a valuable asset. Really, shopkeeper, do you think someone like me is a loser? As long as you work harder and persevere, will you achieve something? Well, the person I like most is you. After hearing these words, Tian Suahu, who was in a daze, seemed to be inspired. Shopkeeper, thank you for thinking so highly of me. I will not give up on myself, and I will definitely work hard until the end. At this time, she still didn't know how much impact the conversation between the two tonight would have on her entire life in the future. One day in the future, when she successfully becomes the 10 elites of Tatsuki and begins to lead Tatsuki Academy with Nakari Arena, Yukihira Soma and many other geniuses, she will finally understand. Night. The soft moonlight and the dots of stars made the night sky peaceful. Later, some diners came to the Izakaya one after another, and among these diners, there are actually Kikuchi Sono from the Haragoto-e restaurant next door, and her friend Taki Kadazuki. Both of you, what do you want to eat when you come to the Izakaya? Seeing that it was the two of them, Zhang Fan greeted them warmly and asked, Taki, what do you want to eat? Jiazi Yuongguo, who had just come in, couldn't help but have a faint blush on his face after seeing Zhang Fan. Immediately, she quickly turned her head and asked Kadazuki Taki next to her, can you make Valencian paella? Kadazuki Taki stared at Zhang Fan with his fierce gaze, but finally asked curiously, seafood. Rice. Will it be 100 million points? Okay, then the Valencian paella for two. Kadazuki Taki responded without thinking, okay. Just a moment after Zhang Fan finished speaking, he went back to the cooking table and prepared to make Valencian paella. When it comes to Spanish food, many people will blurt out paella, and if you are a beginner who knows a little bit of Spanish, it seems that no one cannot speak la paella. Paella. Looking across the east and west, the formation of most delicacies can be attributed to the gathering and separation of ingredients. There are many excellent dishes that are either amazing or regrettable, but only the Valencian paella has a rich exotic flavor and is unforgettable. Taste experience. Although there is no historical data to prove it, where did Valencian paella come from? But one thing that is certain is that Valencian paella was already very popular more than 200 years ago. It was then that workers gathered at noon to mix the leftovers with rice and cook them over an open fire. Therefore, in the original paella, there was no seafood in the ingredients. Later, Valencians who loved to enjoy delicious food continued to develop risotto containing ingredients, such as vegetable risotto, fish risotto, paella, etc., with a wide variety of varieties. Nowadays, with the development of the times, dishes using seafood as raw materials have become popular among many people. Therefore, various hodgepodges of risotto gradually evolved into paella: squid, tiger shrimp, white shrimp, mussels, clams, small yellow croaker, kelp, onions, ginger and garlic, red bell pepper, long green pepper. There's also short grain rice, white wine, white onions, tomatoes, olive oil, saffron, parsley and more. After preparing these ingredients, Zhang Fan took out a very large shallow pan. The reason why this shape of pot is used is that the essence of paella is the layer of crispy rice on the bottom and wall of the pot. Therefore, the pot wall should be short, the pot area should be large, and only a thin layer of rice should be spread, so as to produce the most rice crust as possible. Then use a pair of kitchen scissors to scrape off the scales of the small yellow croaker, then dispose of the gills and internal organs. Then use a slicing knife to make a 10 on the fish head. Peel off the scalp and throw it away. Peel the tiger shrimps and white shrimps, remove the shrimp lines, keep the shrimp heads and shells, and clean the squid. Bring a pot of water to a rolling boil and add the mussels. Pay attention not to exceed 15 seconds. A large amount of bubbles will bubble up and then fish out with a slight opening. Break off half of the shell and cut off the byssus in the soft body. The same goes for clams. Put them into boiling water, fish them out, and break off half of the shells. Fry the small yellow croaker. Put the pan on the stove. Cook over medium heat for 3 minutes. Pour the olives and add a small yellow croaker. The medium heat is slightly lower, but the pot must be hot enough to make seafood soup. Put the small yellow croaker and the freshly fried ingredients into the stew pot. Add 2 pieces of kelp, pour in hot water, bring to boil over high heat, and simmer over low heat. I underestimated the owner of this Izakaya. I didn't expect that he could actually make such an unpopular Valencian paella with style. At this moment, looking at Zhang Fan, who was busy, Kadazaki Taki couldn't help but fall into deep thought. Chapter 104: A dish that can change the entire Western food may be coming. Night. Yukihira Soma with dried squid in his mouth after experiencing hunger and cold. My mentality finally collapsed. Who would have thought that the area occupied by Tatsuki Academy would be so exaggerated? It would take more than a few hours to walk from the assessment site all the way to Jixinglio. Finally, with great difficulty, we followed the points drawn on the map and reached the Jixinglio dormitory. As a result, we found that this place was different from the buildings we saw along the way, looking slightly dilapidated and shabby. So tired. Besides, is this Jixinglio? Chuangzhen withdrew his gaze and asked with a helpless smile. At this moment, a gust of cold wind suddenly blew by, making his hair stand on end, so he quickly stepped forward and pressed the doorbell. Who is it? Could it be Tadakoro from room 302, who has returned from an outing? Soon, an older voice came from inside, and then the door slowly opened, and he poked his head slightly. With a peripheral vision of his eyes, he saw that the person ringing the doorbell in front of him was not Tadakoro, but a young man with short red hair. Amidao Fumio, the dormitory supervisor, couldn't help but be stunned for a few times. Excuse me, is this Jixinglio? Chuangzhen scratched the back of his head and said a little at a loss, who are you? Wengsu frowned, then slapped his head. Look at my memory, you are the transfer student Yukihira Isoma who wants to stay here, right? Let me introduce myself first. I am Daimadang Wengsu, the dormitory manager here. Of course, you can call me Our Lady of the Pole Star, or you can call me Mrs. Wengsu, Our Lady of the Pole Star. Hearing this, Chuangzhen felt ashamed. He suddenly had a bad premonition, always feeling that he might come to a strange place. Are the ingredients ready? What to prepare? Chuangzhen, the look on his face turned confused. Don't you know that every student who wants to move into the Jixing dormitory must first go through a dormitory trial? Looking at Sama Yukihira, who seemed to be really unaware, Fumio put his hands on his hips and continued without any politeness. If you can't let me see your cooking skills, then you will never step into this dormitory, and if you can't complete the trial, you will have to sleep in the wild all the time. So, really interesting, then. Can I borrow your kitchen? I really don't know anything about the dormitory trial, but there are such assessment conditions, so naturally I have to perform well and use my cooking to gain your approval. Finally, Sama raised the corners of his mouth slightly and said to Amidao Fumio with sharp eyes, When Wengsu saw this, he was stunned. Before cooking a dish, we have to try to recognize it and understand it. This is the basis of deliciousness. After all, the taste of a recipe may vary greatly from chef to chef. Of course, this does not mean that the recipe is a problem, but that the chef's habits, techniques, etc. will deviate. Use medium-high heat and cook until the soup is obviously lower than the rice grains. Then turn to low heat and continue to simmer for 10 minutes. Keep the mouth open throughout the process. Wait 10 minutes, insert the clams, and then add the squid, mussels, shrimps and tiger prawns in sequence. Pay attention to the way you add seafood. The clams and mussels must be inserted. Only in this way can the delicious juice steam out and flow into the rice. Then the squid is cooked better than the shrimp. If it is placed on the bottom, and the shrimp and tiger prawn are placed on top, it will be less heated. Cover the pot and simmer over low heat for 6 minutes. The reason why it is 6 minutes is because at about 2 minutes, the pot lid will become hot and steaming will begin. At 5 minutes, the skin of the tiger prawns will turn red. Generally speaking, seafood should not be heated for more than 3 minutes so that it tastes fresh and tender. The reason for simmering it for a minute longer is to allow more sweet juices from the seafood to flow into the rice, thereby improving the flavor of the whole pot of rice. During the final stew of the seafood, pick off the parsley leaves and chop them. Finally, take it out of the pan, sprinkle with chopped parsley, and cut 2 lemons. The smell just smells delicious. The paella served on the table with steaming the rice with saffron showed a beautiful golden color under the light, covering the plate lightly and carrying a delicate fragrance at the same time. The surface of the paella is covered with mussels, oysters, fresh shrimps, and lobster tails. The fresh and sweet aroma of various seafood penetrates directly into every rice grain, and you can feel the taste of the ocean. At this moment, just by looking at it, you can deeply feel that the Valencian paella made by Zhang Fan has a kind of endless creativity. He is like a powerful creator who blended all kinds of seafood and rice to create this fragrant seafood dish in front of you. What is this? Is this still the Valencian paella that I remember? After looking at it, Kobayashi Taki finally couldn't help but screamed. Even if she hasn't really tasted it, she can still feel deeply from the appearance of this dish that a dish that can change the entire Western food may be coming. Delicious and crispy squid, fresh and tender white shrimp, fluffy, sweet mussels, thick and plump clams, crisp and tough kelp. These seafood ingredients come in different colors and flavors. It is served on a bright ceramic plate, stacked with a soft and glutinous rice, blending together, making people have the urge to eat it. Come, I'll give you some wine unique to the Valencia region. It will be more enjoyable to eat and drink with paella. Immediately, Zhang Fan placed the 2 glasses of wine he had mixed in front of Kobayashi Taki and Kikashin, perhaps in order to match the distinguished Valencian rice with a complimentary drink. They also invented a drink made of sugar, orange juice, and Cointreau, and it was euphemistically called Valencia water. Kobayashi Taki withdrew his shocked gaze, then he quickly used a spoon to take a mouthful of paella and ate it in a plate of paella. The most tempting seafood always seems to be prawns, clams and squid. However, many people may have overlooked that rice is the biggest protagonist. The basis for making paella is not rich in seafood, but the production of rice. This principle is just like the reason why pizza becomes pizza. It's not about how many tricks you can play with the ingredients above, but first you have to have a piece of dough. At this time, when I took a bite, my mouth was filled with a taste of seafood. Then there are the layers of flavor, which gradually unfold in the mouth, like the waves of the sea crashing against a coastline again and again. Probably only the rice grains with a hard core retained, plus a layer of crispy rice at the bottom of the pot, are the texture that authentic Spanish paella should have. So Kobayashi couldn't help but widen his eyes as he just swallowed it. This meal. Chapter 105. Kobayashi Taki conquered every grain of rice. They are all cooked just right, fragrant and rich in texture, the perfect paella, and a layer of very crispy rice crackers. The crunchy texture when you take one bite is very enjoyable. Moreover, the rice has absorbed the fresh and sweet juices of the seafood, making it soft and chewy with a subtle chewy texture, paired with delicious mussels, clams, shrimps, squid, small yellow croaker, etc. It is simply a feast of unique seafood dishes. After saying this, as if his hands were out of control, Kobayashi Taki quickly took another mouthful of paella and ate it quickly. Do not know why the taste of this paella, it made her feel familiar, yet so strange at the same time. Her friend Muji Aziyuongo next to her glanced at her secretly and saw that she had fallen in love with Zhang Fan, and couldn't help but smile knowingly. Immediately afterwards, she couldn't wait to scoop up a spoonful of hot paella and began to taste the deliciousness. Suddenly, the entire Izakaya fell into an inexplicable tranquility. Only the 2 girls, Taki Kakuzaki and Kao Kikuchichi, were eating paella, making a slight sound of ba, 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 ba. In previous years, September was the fragrant rice season in the Suca region of Valencia. A grand paella martial arts event will be held, namely, the Suca International Paella Competition. This peak showdown competition that brings together experts from all walks of life in the field of paella is often extremely professional, and all contestants must be working professional chefs. So it's not so much an international paella competition as it is a touchstone. As a graduate of Tatsuki, Taki Kobayashi won the championship of the competition last year, and he was famous for a while, of course, because the cuisine she is good at is a kind of unpopular Western cuisine. So even though she is very talented, the dishes she cooks often cannot be understood by many people. Even those dishes of hers, most people still don't like it because the flavor and texture of this kind of Spanish food are often incompatible with a local neon country. In addition, she lacked the ability to innovate and was unable to develop cuisine with a neon country flavor. In the end, she had no choice but to go to Spain, where she ran a Western-style restaurant called Taki Amarillo. After adding the stock and seasonings first and mixing them well, pour the rice in and stir it slightly to spread it over the bottom of the pot, then don't move it anymore. It seems that the purpose of this method is to prevent the starch in the rice grains from precipitation, and at the same time it will be softer. The way mussels and clams are processed seems a bit. At the end of the meal, Kobayashi Taki was a little confused. She carefully observed the whole plate of paella again, and then she felt a sudden enlightenment. She couldn't help but said, "The shells of mussels and clams are really meaningless compared with the fried small yellow croaker and shrimp heads. My previous method was to take raw meat and add it before serving, so that the juice would naturally enter the rice. As it turns out, this paella is indeed strained with the soup in which they are cooked, added to the soup base, and then the cooked meat is sprinkled on top of the rice. The shell is just for presentation. That's amazing. Why didn't I think of you, all?" In all thousands of words, just one sentence, Zhang Fan's unique seafood rice is the only one in the world. At the same time, Muji Uzingo on the side also analyzed it and couldn't help but said, "In addition to the good handling of the seafood, the texture of the rice is also smooth and glutinous. The texture is similar to the japonica rice from the northeastern region of China, and the paella made from this long-grain rice can absorb juice and have clear grains, which is especially suitable for the teeth of our Neon people. Paired with those seafood, the whole dish is so delicious that I almost couldn't hold it back." 4. The choice of rice. I did not use local rice in Spain, but switched to japonica rice from northeast China. Zhang Fan nodded and replied, in his opinion, a large part of the Spanish people's enthusiasm is reflected in their food. For example, they are not like the table culture of many European countries, where everyone enjoys their own portion. Instead, they share food with everyone. This culture is especially evident in paella in Spanish restaurants. It is rare to eat paella for one person, but more for 2 people, 4 people, and larger portions. In the process of making paella, the rice is first half fried, and then the broth is added little by little and cooked slowly. This cooking method is completely different from cooking rice in a rice cooker, so the taste is naturally different. Therefore, the rice of paella is not cooked, but has a hardness, otherwise it would taste like a pot of seafood porridge. So the biggest problem is the choice of rice, because the cross-section of japonica rice is nearly round, its texture is hard and its color is as white as jade. The cooked rice is shiny, sweet and fragrant, so it is most suitable for seafood meals. Moreover, the rice on the edge of the pot is charred and fragrant, and the rice in the middle is warm and salty. The steamed rice is also just right in hardness. As long as it is paired with fresh seafood, it is absolutely perfect for chewing slowly. Food is the best way to stimulate imagination and evoke the taste and memories. After quickly finishing a whole plate of paella, Kobayashi Taki, still not satisfied, picked up the glass of Valencia-specific white wine and couldn't help but take a sip. The liquid of this wine is transparent amber, and it looks majestic and calm from the outside. In the mouth, the taste is smooth and sweet, with a hint of power. Moreover, the aroma of the wine is very rich in layers, and even the aftertaste is refreshing and mellow, which is inviting for aftertaste. Gradually Kobayashi Taki began to enter a state, but I saw rays of sunshine shining on the bullring, and the crowd cheered one after another. Boom, the cymbals clicked. Everyone was even more excited. Then, a bullfighter Taki Kobayashi, who was wearing a red dress, with tall chest, or chest as tall as an airport, entered like a gentleman. Slowly came to the bullring with elegant steps. Opposite her, a plum-shaped iron-horned bull's eyes were full of anger, like an irrational monster that wanted to attack her. Bring it on, let me see your strength, Taki. Kobayashi, who transformed into a matador, waved the red cloth at the end. Immediately afterwards, the ferocious bull rushed towards Taki Kobayashi with lightning speed. The scene was filled with breathless attention, waiting for the miracle to arrive. Kobayashi Taki was seen to be calm and composed, with the corners of her mouth slightly raised, not concealing the confidence in her heart. She thought that with her rich experience, she could dodge the attack of this cow. At last, rushing over, the plum-shaped iron-horned bull finally charged over. She dodged nimbly, but she never expected that she couldn't dodge and was knocked away by the cow alive. Such a strong impact immediately made her foam at the mouth, roll her eyes, and her consciousness seemed to fade away at this moment. What's wrong with me? Suddenly, Kobayashi Taki came to his senses and couldn't help but murmur. Chapter 106. A man with fatal attraction. Rather than having a noisy meal with a group of people, Kobayashi Taki prefers to chat with 1 or 2 friends while eating slowly. Meal, eat well, liquor, drink well, talk thoroughly, then each opens his or her heart. This kind of dining environment is very good for her. Unfortunately, since she went to the distant country of Spain after graduation, the opportunities to have meals with Kikuchi Sonoko have become less and less. After finishing the meal, Kobayashi Taki continued to sit at the dining table. Occasionally she would drink wine alone, and then slowly close her eyes to enjoy this peaceful moment. Indeed, just as Kikuchi described it, the owner of this Izakaya has better cooking skills than both of them. Moreover, there is another fact that makes Kobayashi Taki even more frightened. That is, Zhang Fan can even cook unpopular dishes so well, as if he has no shortcomings at all. Shopkeeper, there was a time, Spanish barbecue is quickly becoming popular around the world. However, this phenomenon was short-lived and quickly fell into obscurity. In fact, this kind of barbecue is easy to make, the taste is more in line with the appetite of Chinese people, and the price is affordable. But why can't I be seen in China? Despite Kadazuki Taki's impatient personality, he is still quite good at dealing with people and has no scheming. Coupled with Zhang Fan's cooking skills, she saw the hope of the rise of Spanish cuisine. Therefore, compared with the cold treatment she received before, her inner impression of him was much better this time. The reason, I think maybe it requires diners to bake it themselves. This will cause a big problem, that is, the taste cannot be guaranteed. Like many diners, this was the first time she grilled meat. Because she was not skilled in the technique, she was afraid that the meat would not be cooked enough. As a result, she could not control the right timing on the heat and the meat would be burnt to black. In the end, every time she wanted to eat barbecue, whether it was to bring friends or for business needs, she would not choose it in order to avoid making a fool of herself. Zhang Fan thought for a while and explained softly, is that so? Isn't it part of the fun to enjoy making delicious food by letting diners grill their own meat? Also, Spain is originally the home of bullfighting and is rich in beef, especially the locally produced Rubia Galaga beef, together with the Fason beef from Piedmont and the Ozaki beef from Miyazaki Prefecture in the Neon Country. They are collectively known as the 3 largest beef in the world. So, I think the main reason why it hasn't become popular in China is that people in China don't eat beef very much, right? Kadazuki Taki crossed his arms and swore out his opinions in front of Zhang Fan. Every year Chinese people consume 50 million tons of pork, but beef and mutton are only about 1/10 of pork. Therefore, it does make sense to say that Chinese people don't eat beef very much after all. From a historical perspective, only pork was raised in the Central Plains, and cattle and sheep were the staple food of the nomadic people outside the Great Wall. The home of the Chinese people means that there are pigs in the house, so the Chinese people pay more attention to pork. In addition, cattle were a particularly important labor force in ancient times. Cattle were needed to work on cultivated land. In ancient times, the government also banned the consumption of beef. Maybe there is a historical and traditional reason, but it is obviously biased to attribute everything to this issue. In China, there have already been foods similar to rao jiamo, rao shao, or barbecue burritos. Compared with these local products with a long history, Spanish barbecue is not particularly outstanding in terms of cost, taste and convenience, so it is not easy to become popular. In the end, Zhang Fan just glanced at her and said calmly, this. Kadazuki Taki couldn't help being stunned when he heard this, but then he stopped protesting. She once went to Xianchoxj, where she just set up a barbecue stall on the roadside, grilled mutton skewers over charcoal fire, and then hawked them in an accented language. And this kind of professional barbecue stalls are often very popular, and there are often many people queuing up in front of the stalls. Therefore, maybe as Zhang Fan said, Spanish barbecue can't beat these local barbecue dishes. Shopkeeper, please pay. Then, after finishing the last sip of wine, Kadazuki Taki called Zhang Fan to pay. Although when the two met each other at first, she was a little jealous because he was closer to Mujiazi Iwanguo. And she really didn't have a good impression of Zhang Fan, but it has to be said that this woman, who often has fair size and an impatient personality, has fallen deeply in love with the Izakaya at this moment. Why, Taki, are you leaving so soon? Mujiazi Iwanguo couldn't help but feel happy seeing that the relationship between Kadazuki Taki and Zhang Fan had finally improved as a result. Even before closing time, Taki Kadazuki wanted to leave the Izakaya. Right, you bust a monster. I can't stand your simple thoughts. If you continue to stay here, you and I will probably get into trouble. After saying this, Kadazuki Taki pretended to be angry, stretched out his dragon claw hand and went straight to Kukachingo. Taki, you don't want it. Seeing Kadazuki Taki's actions, Kakazi quickly realized something, and hurriedly covered her chest and moved back, fearful enough to keep a certain distance from her. I have to admit that Zhang Fan is the kind of man who is fatally attracted to any woman, not to mention the handsome appearance, just the unpredictable temperament, calm and wise, not frivolous and gentle character is enough to make all women fall into it and be unable to extricate themselves. Everywhere on his body seems to be so charming and seductive. Yes, Kadazuki Taki admitted that for a moment, she, a person who had never been cold to men, was actually touched in her heart, but the more she felt like this, the more scared she felt. She was even more worried that Muji Aziyuongo next to her would fall deeply in love with Zhang Fan due to lack of determination. Shopkeeper, your paella is indeed very good. I'm really ashamed to say it. Although I, Taki Kadazuki, am a chef who is good at Spanish cuisine, but no matter how hard I try over the years, I have never been able to promote this kind of cuisine. Now it is even worse than you, the owner of an izakaya, even if it means I have to work harder for a few more years, no, decades. I'm afraid I can't push paella to such a high level like you. Then, seeing how Mikayachi was afraid of him, Kadazuki Taki could only sigh deeply, then turned around and sighed to Zhang Fan. This paella, it's just a normal way of doing it. It's not very elegant or delicious. Of course, if you like my food, you can come to the izakaya often in the future. Zhang Fan, after listening to Kadazuki Taki's words, just replied humbly, I will come again. After that, Kadazuki Taki pulled the confused Mikashi next to him and said, okay, we should go. Chapter 107 The Strongest Monster in Yuanayu. In the dead of night, the stars still shine as closing time approached. Tadakoro was about to leave. It's really rare that you stayed in an izakaya for so long. Zhang Fan looked at Tadakoro and said with a smile, shopkeeper, it's actually very interesting to chat with you, and every time I watch you cooking, my heart feels at ease. If it hadn't been so late, I would have really wanted to stay here. After saying that, Tian Sua, who took out the money to settle the bill, then politely said goodbye to Zhang Fan, turned around and planned to leave. Wait, don't leave in a hurry. Seeing this, Zhang Fan quickly stopped her and immediately, he took out 5 wagashi, a Japanese dessert, wrapped them simply and handed them to her, saying, here. Take it, remember to eat it when you go back, don't leave it until tomorrow morning. No, not too good, right? Looking at the exquisite wagashi in front of her, Tazo couldn't help but cover her mouth obviously. On the occasion of parting, she was a little surprised and a little touched that Zhang Fan would give him some sweet treats at first. She wanted to refuse, but when she raised her head and saw Zhang Fan's unusually firm gaze, she had no choice but to stretch out her hands and carefully take the wagashi. Okay, just some wagashi. It seems like you owe me a lot of kindness. I even get goosebumps from looking at you like this. Anyway, you should work hard and try to win the first assessment period of the semester. Zhang Fan smiled lightly and patted Yan Suahu on the shoulder. Shopkeeper, I know, thank you very much. Tian Suahu was so moved that her nose and heart felt sour. These years, in Totsuki Academy, a low-achieving student like her suffered discrimination and ridicule from other students even though she was in the Gakusei dormitory. Her dormmates, such as Yoshino Yuki, Sakaki Ryoko, Aishiki Wei, Marui Zenji, etc., were all pretty good to her. But instead, she felt the strongest care from Zhang Fan. This kind of care made her feel very happy and also made her feel heavy. After all, he is too weak now. If he cannot become stronger as soon as possible, he will only live up to Zhang Fan's expectations of himself. Finally, after continuing to chat with Zhang Fan for a few words, Tadakoro Wei reluctantly left the izakaya. Commander-in-Chief, why do you and I come to a small place like this when we get together? The school season in Yuanayu has begun. The date for the most important residential training trial activity for freshmen is gradually approaching. As the chief chef of Totsuki Resort, Jin Dojima was naturally invited by the commander-in-chief. However, Jin Dojima never expected that commander-in-chief Nakari Senzuman would take him to a small izakaya. It's an izakaya at most. It is a place for idle people to relax regardless of the scale or the chef's own cooking skills. It is definitely far inferior to a 5-star hotel like the Totsuki Rikyu inside the resort. Not to mention one is the current commander-in-chief, the other one is the chief cook. How could someone with such an identity and status choose to be in a place like this? The more he thought about it, the more unclear he became. Dojima Jin felt deeply depressed and couldn't figure out what the commander-in-chief was thinking. Silver, don't underestimate this izakaya, and people like you and me tend to be restrained on important occasions, but in a place like an izakaya, in addition to drinking some wine and eating some side dishes, you can also open up to each other and talk about what's on your mind. Of course, the most important thing is that I want you to meet the shop owner. I think with your own strength, after seeing his cooking, you should be able to know some of his secrets better than me. As if he had read through Dojima Jin's thoughts, The commander-in-chief just stroked his beard and smiled mysteriously. Then he ignored Dajima-jin and directly opened the door and walked into the izakaya. Could it be that, behind him, Dajima-jin became more and more confused as he listened, and at the same time he became more curious. At night, the owner of an izakaya is not that unusual, to put it bluntly. If you just reach out and grab something on any street in Neon Country, you will always be able to catch it. But judging from the commander-in-chief's reaction, it seems that this shop owner is extremely talented and completely different from other izakaya shop owners. After thinking about it, Dajima-jin could only sort out his complicated emotions. Then he stopped thinking about anything and quickly walked into the izakaya with steady steps. As soon as he entered the door and saw Zhang Fan, who was busy, the commander-in-chief's face immediately showed a kind smile. Zhang Fan, very busy? What? A rare guest, Commander. You haven't been into the izakaya for a long time. Seeing that the visitor turned out to be Nakari Arena's grandfather and Nakari Manaji's father, Zhang Fan warmly entertained him. Want some sake? Or do you want shochu? 2 bottles of sake. The commander-in-chief chose a seat and sat down, still smiling. 2 bottles, Zhang Fan frowned upon hearing this. At this moment, Dajima-jin, who followed closely behind, walked into the izakaya and he quickly came to the commander-in-chief's side. And Zhang Fan couldn't help but suddenly realized when he saw this that Dajima-jin, who was deeply impressed in front of him, was dressed in a formal black suit. The softness and comfort of the details, as well as the belt buckle inlaid with gems, completely reflect his burly and sturdy physique. It was probably a strong man who always appeared in a majestic manner, so all the diners around him were affected and looked at this side. For Zhang Fan, this person represents the strongest monster in the history of Yuan. Being able to accompany the commander-in-chief to his izakaya today was something he never expected. Zhang Fan, let me introduce it to you. This is our Tatsuki Group's resort chief chef, Jin Dajima. He is the first among the top 10 graduates of the 69th class. His graduation results are currently in the entire Tatsuki Academy. No one can surpass him. Next to him, the commander-in-chief quickly introduced him. I've heard a little bit about it. Zhang Fan, after looking away, just nodded lightly. As for Dajima-jin here, after looking at Zhang Fan for a few times, he couldn't help flashing an appreciative look. From the moment he came in, it was obvious that this young man was not at all restrained in front of the commander-in-chief, as if he only regarded him as an ordinary diner. Therefore, Dajima-jin directly concluded that the Zhang Fan in front of him might be more extraordinary than he imagined. Chapter 108 Zhu Feng Xiang Luan, a dish comparable to Shanglong dumplings. Meat on the oven, it's steaming as the aroma of meat spreads. The diner's happiness increases unconsciously. One bite of meat, one bite of rice, and then carefully experience the final deliciousness of the plump roasted pork chop in your mouth, as if the whole world is trembling, and a blazing fire is igniting in your belly. At this moment, the entire izakaya was aroused with all kinds of energy because of the barbecue. Oh, this sake. Sure enough, this is the flavor that I have been dreaming about. Jin Dajima, who was drinking with the commander-in-chief, slowly put down his glass and couldn't help but let out a long breath of alcohol. The impetuous inner world slowly calmed down at this moment. Then he opened his eyes and looked at the diners in the izakaya for a moment. He was startled when he saw that most of them were ordering barbecue. Indeed, Zhang Fan's izakaya has a wide variety of products, including beer, sake, shochu, plum wine, cocktails, fruit wine, etc. As for the cuisine, there are even more. In addition to freshly baked and eaten barbecue, there are also fried foods, boiled foods, staple dishes, desserts. Sometimes some diners I will also have a bowl of ochazuke rice and udon noodles. It seems that he is willing to give up only when he is satisfied with his food. Therefore, in a sense, Zhang Fan's izakaya does not have much of the Neon Country style. On the contrary, they are similar to the barbecue restaurants in Xianchao. They have a lot of snacks in common and the business hours are mainly at night. Shopkeeper, your signature dish here is barbecue. No, Zhang Fan shook his head and replied, our restaurant does not have any signature dishes. The only rule is that diners can order whatever they want, as long as there are ready-made ingredients and what I can cook. As for the barbecue you mentioned, maybe the weather has turned a little colder these days, and with the arrival of the school season, everyone prefers it. From what you said, this izakaya has something more delicious than barbecue. Dajima Jin raised his eyebrows and asked a very idiotic question without thinking clearly. After all, Zhang Fan had just explained the ordering rules, and no matter how much you try in an izakaya like this, you can never say that it only cooks barbecue. There must be other dishes. There are many more delicious dishes than barbecue, Zhang Fan said calmly. For example, dajima. Jin heard this and asked curiously, Phoenix Crystal, this is the most delicious dish I can make with the existing ingredients. Zhang Fan replied without thinking, Phoenix Crystal, dajima. Jin couldn't help but froze when he heard the name of the recipe Phoenix and Crystal. These two words represent auspiciousness, harmony and beauty, especially in the cultural tradition of the Celestial Dynasty. The phoenix is regarded as a divine bird with the ability to regenerate and renew, and is one of the auspicious animals in people's minds, and crystals are believed to have magical powers that can bring good luck and good health. But he, Dajima Jin, had never heard of the cuisine created by combining the two words. Okay, let's have some phoenix crystal dishes. In the end, Dajima's silver eyes rolled around in a circle, and after thinking about it again and again, he said to Zhang Fan, Zhang Fan just hummed yet, which was considered a response. Then, he turned his attention back to Nakare Senziman, and then asked, So, where are you, Commander-in-Chief? Listening to the name, could it be that it's a dish that's comparable to the shorayu dumplings I tasted at the izakaya last time? The Commander-in-Chief asked with a flicker of his eyes. Yes, this Phoenix crystal dish, although the ingredients used are simpler than Shenglong dumplings, but its taste and texture, including the visual effect of the final product, are not inferior to Shenglong dumplings at all. If that's the case, then it's up to you, okay you two just wait a moment. After finishing speaking, Zhang Fan turned around and returned to the cooking table. After a little preparation, he started making phoenix crystal dishes. So far there is no ancient book recording the inventor of bean sprouts, but in fact, just looking at the principle of growing bean sprouts, it is not difficult to infer that bean sprouts are very likely to be discovered and promoted in the lives of working people when plant seeds germinate under certain temperature and humidity conditions. The root sprouts that grow are bean sprouts. This process relies on the plant's own nutrition and is completely oilless. Just like an egg hatching into a chick according to measurements, every 100 grams of bean sprouts contains 44 kcal of calories, 4.5 grams of protein, 3 grams of carbohydrates, 1.6 grams of fat, and 1.5 grams of dietary fiber, as well as carotene, retinol, thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, vitamin C, vitamin E, potassium, calcium, magnesium, iron. Anyway, buy bean sprouts for a few dollars. It can definitely enrich the table, adjust the taste, and provide the nutritional needs of any diner. Ding. After a crisp sound, but it was obvious that Zhang Fan was holding an all-purpose knife from the Quizhaiyan kitchen utensil set tightly in his hand. If you look closely, the overall shape of this knife is particularly exquisite. The handle is engraved with the image of a peacock spreading its tail, and the blade is as bright as a mirror at the same time. Under the light, an extremely handsome face can be seen clearly. Finally, the little bits of light on the tip of the knife kept flashing, as if to show the world the sharpness of this kitchen knife. Then, let's get started. Zhang Fan, who calmed down a little and then relaxed, began to process a piece of potato on the chopping board. Brush. This domineering and sharp swordsmanship immediately caught Dajima Jin's attention. However, just when everyone thought he was going to slice the potatoes, he suddenly changed his method and actually used the tip of the all-purpose knife to carve the potato chunks. Right, not cutting, not chopping, rather, he is carving like a carver, sculpture. He was actually carving potatoes. Dajima Jin was confused for a moment. Take a celestial kitchen knife to carve? I have to say that this particularly offbeat approach short-circuited his brain. It's really interesting. I always thought his knife skills were rough and crazy, full of that amazing speed and power. I never expected that his knife skills could be so subtle that he could use the tip of a kitchen knife to meticulously carve potato chunks. The Commander-in-Chief came to his senses after being shocked and sighed deeply. Soon, Zhang Fan carved the potatoes, then heat the oil in the pan. Wait until the temperature of the oil is about the same, then quickly add the rock sugar. Continue to simmer over low heat, add boiling water and simmer until the sugar juice bubbles. As the bean sprouts that have been stuffed with minced meat are pulled out, they are quickly covered with a layer of sugar coating. Finally, with flowing movements, it was spliced into Zhu Feng Xiang Luan Phoenix. This food. Seeing this scene, Dajima Jin was so shocked that his jaw almost dislocated. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109 Amazing. This is Zhang Fan's true strength. Light falling down like silk in an instant, the phoenix was covered with a layer of golden gauze. Its feathers were light gold, and began to shine with dazzling light, like carefully carved works of art. At the same time, its body is slender and elegant, and its head is held high, showing a proud and noble posture. Glow, cooking. Actually glows, Dojima. Jin couldn't help but be stunned when he looked at the phoenix that was shining brightly in front of him. This phenomenon, which was particularly contrary to scientific principles, once again made his head buzz. But when he turned his head and looked at the extremely calm commander next to him, he quickly calmed down. Maybe this shop owner must have some kind of superpower, just like the commander-in-chief's clothes bursting skill, which allows his clothes to burst when he tastes delicious food. Does he have a skill that can make the food shine? Then, just when Dojima Jin fell into random thoughts, the entire Phoenix Crystal Cuisine's light gradually faded away. Zhang Fan, who has sharp eyes and quick hands, quickly sprinkled some sugar juice on the eyes. In this way, a thrilling phoenix truly appeared in front of everyone. If you look closely, you will see that the red feathers are all bean sprouts wrapped in sugar. Then, the entire body and skeleton are carefully carved from potatoes, and the final tail is made from carrots, cabbage, and purple onions. In other words, the entire phoenix is made of these ingredients coupled with a luminous effect. It really shocked all the diners of the Izakaya, including Dojima Jin and the commander-in-chief. It is no exaggeration to say that the ingredients used in the entire dish are really very simple, nothing more than bean sprouts, potato, carrot, Chinese cabbage, minced meat. But it was just these ingredients that were finally spliced together into a phoenix. The fiery red and turquoise tail feathers, as well as the lifelike figure, all demonstrate the majesty of the phoenix as the king of birds. Let me ask you, who doesn't like this kind of food, eh? See, every ingredient is showing its maximum value, like the entire phoenix's feathers. They are actually made up of bean sprouts spliced together one by one. The skeleton and the backbone of the body are made of potatoes, while the tail is made of carrots, cabbage, and purple onions. Interesting, really interesting. This is simply a very artistic and beautiful cooking work. In fact, compared to the exquisite image of Phoenix as the chief chef, Jin Dojima pays more attention to the various ingredients in the cuisine. Therefore, he has been looking at this Phoenix crystal dish and began to gradually analyze why Zhang Fan used these ingredients to match it. Of course, just observe with the naked eye. In fact, it is difficult to peek into all the secrets of this dish. So, after thinking for a moment, Dojima Jin quickly took his chopsticks, picked up a few bean sprouts, stuffed them into his mouth, and started chewing slowly. When the commander-in-chief on the side saw this, he just showed a faint smile. And then he also used chopsticks to pick up a few bean sprouts and taste them carefully. Crunch. As soon as it entered the mouth, there was the sound of bean sprouts being chewed. The delicate and elastic bean sprouts pop in your mouth immediately, giving you a crispy feeling. This feeling is indeed unexpected, to be honest. When they watched Zhang Fan weave a phoenix with bean sprouts, both Jin Dojima and the commander-in-chief were very surprised in their hearts. It's not that the ingredients like bean sprouts are good, but the technique of weaving and splicing is so delicate that it's so exaggerated that it's not an exaggeration to describe it even by a millimeter. You know, although bean sprouts have a fresh and crispy taste, especially after Zhang Fan has removed the head and tail of the bean sprouts, leaving only the slippery trunk, it is indeed easier to weave. However, although even if it uses potatoes as its trunk, it is still very difficult to use bean sprouts to form an exquisite phoenix. Hiss. What is this kind of texture that collapses in your mouth? At this time, Dojima Jin, who had just taken a bite, had his eyes widened by the crispy texture before he could taste it carefully. The bean sprouts had a very crisp texture, but they were not so chewy that they would instantly fall apart in his mouth, so he quickly continued to chew them with his teeth. Meat. There's minced meat inside. No, it's minced meat. Could it be that in every bean sprout, he stuffed minced meat? At the end, Jin Dojima, who was completely enlightened, was shocked. Just removing the heads and tails of the bean sprouts and then splicing them into phoenixes is an astonishing amount of work. If Zhang Fan hadn't made some preparations in advance, I'm afraid he might not be able to make this dish if he was given another 2 hours. But that's not the point. The point is, He actually stuffs minced meat into every bean sprout. The workload brought by this bizarre idea is destined to be very heavy, and even Dajima-jin feels a little creepy then. The layer of sugar juice attached to the outermost surface of the bean sprouts quickly and slowly opened in his mouth, and he could taste another taste in an instant. Sweetness. Anyway, this dish is called Phoenix Crystal. It seems that they only use simple ingredients, but when you actually taste it, you find that there is something really wonderful inside. Amazing, really amazing. In order to improve the crispiness of the bean sprouts, I actually thought of adding seasoned minced meat inside, and then boiling the mung bean sprouts in water, until this moment, Dajima-jin was completely convinced. After all, no chef would dare to think like this, let alone Zhang Fan, who would spend a lot of energy to complete it slowly. Oh, it's not minced meat, it's minced meat. The commander-in-chief next to him seemed to understand something after hearing Dajima-jin's analysis. If a successful dish wants to make diners have a sense of appetite, it must make breakthroughs in the three aspects of color, aroma and taste. Obviously, Zhang Fan's Phoenix Crystal cuisine has reached an extreme level in these three aspects. The bean sprouts are paired with a sweet minced meat, leaving diners with a lingering aftertaste in the end, which is smooth and addictive. Yes, that's what it feels like as long as you taste and carefully analyze the flavor lingering on the tip of your tongue. The commander-in-chief will feel particularly happy and satisfied. Chapter 110. People ruthlessly abandoned by the new era. Gradually the commander-in-chief and Dajima-jin began to enter a strange state, but in an ethereal environment. The magnificent palace seemed to be covered with colorful clouds gifted from heaven. Look closely, and you will see a graceful phoenix standing resolutely on the top of the palace. The several finely carved feathers on its head are fluttering in the breeze, so beautiful and natural. Suddenly, this magical bird spread its gorgeous wings, and these wings are constantly flashing with golden light under the colorful clouds. They are so beautiful that they are breathtaking. As a result, the commander-in-chief and Dajima-jin couldn't help but be a little intoxicated by this beautiful and strange sight that they had never seen before. Tweet, tweet. Then, the phoenix chirped proudly several times. Such a clear and melodious phoenix cry seems to be showing off its own voice. Then it finally made a few plops and flapped its wings and flew into the sky. After seeing this, no matter how empty your heart is, it will be filled with this intense image of phoenix soaring. Hiss. When the commander-in-chief came to his senses, the clothes on his body finally exploded immediately afterwards. His eyes full of vicissitudes of life were staring at the phoenix in front of him that had a few feathers eaten. In the end, he couldn't bear it anymore, so he picked up the chopsticks, picked up the bean sprouts, and stuffed them into his mouth. General. Commander, you have to let me order, but don't eat it all by yourself. Looking at the commander next to him, he was not only naked, but also looking so embarrassed. Dajima-jin's mood became both surprised and panicked. He didn't expect that this kind of cuisine could instantly conquer the commander-in-chief and make him burst into tears. But just then, the plate of bean sprouts in front of me was decreasing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Involuntarily, Dajima-jin was excited, quickly picked up the chopsticks, and started grabbing the bean sprouts with the commander-in-chief. So, in the Izakaya, two strong men appeared, acting like 3-year-old little boys. A hilarious scene where they fight over a little delicious snack. After a little while, the entire plate of Phoenix Crystal's food was eaten by these two people. Not even a scrap of oil was left. Call. Did not expect. I actually gobble it up and compete with you for the bean sprouts. Commander-in-chief, taking a deep breath, Dajima-jin looked at the empty plate in front of the table and couldn't help but feel something. The main ingredients of this Phoenix Crystal dish are nothing more than bean sprouts, potatoes, carrots, minced meat, etc. But the mystery hidden in it is really not something that can be figured out after eating it. First of all, this cuisine definitely requires very high knife skills, and it requires the chef to have skilled carving skills. Then comes the hands-on weaving and artistic talent, especially carving and weaving a standing phoenix out of bean sprouts, potatoes, etc. It's really not easy, master. It's often among the people. Shopkeeper, your Phoenix Crystal cuisine is particularly good. I really didn't expect that someone at your age could have such superb cooking skills and abilities. It really amazes me. At this time, Dajima-jin looked deeply at Zhang Fan, and finally couldn't help but speak in a particularly praising tone. It's just an ordinary bean sprout dish, but it's an honor for me, Zhang Fan, to win praise from someone like you, who is the chief chef. Zhang Fan smiled softly. Although he didn't look happy or angry on the surface, he was still a little uneasy in his heart at this time. After all, it is interesting to think about the dishes that can be made with bean sprouts, potatoes, minced meat, etc. and then surprise the strongest person in Yuan. I'm also a chef, so I know that this kind of cuisine is very valuable in today's era. I also know that it is very difficult to make the simplest food to the extreme and to make it visually stunning. As the owner of an izakaya, you can treat every dish with such care. Especially if you want to present the best side of the food to the diners. This spirit is worthy of my admiration. When Dajima Jin heard this, he did not hide his thoughts at all and said it truthfully in front of Zhang Fan. After that, he turned his head slightly and said to the commander-in-chief, "Commander, I must have been a little blind just now, so I would like to apologize to you in advance." Dajima Jin, it is undeniable that you are the graduate with the highest score in UNIU's history, but the times are moving forward after all, and it will also be a stage for young people like you and me have a decisive position and influence in today's culinary world, but the old era will eventually come to an end, and the new era is destined to have no ship to carry us forward. At this time, the commander-in-chief, who had put on another piece of clothing, spoke earnestly. More than 20 years ago at that time, many geniuses represented by Jin Dajima, Joichiro Seiba, Itsuki Nakamura, etc. directly created the golden age of Tatsuki. Back then, when they were in UNIU, they were particularly high-spirited and full of vitality. It seems that the entire future cooking era will be completely changed because of them. They are like those bright stars lighting up the dark sky, but things are fickle. So look back now. The subsequent experiences and endings of this group of people will inevitably make people feel sad and sighing. Yes, Commander, you are indeed right. Today's culinary world has long been in decay and has long lost its past glory, and it is difficult for our generation to make changes. After savoring the taste of Phoenix Crystal, Dajima Jin also sighed when Ichiro Seiba reluctantly made the decision to drop out of school. It was already doomed that the entire culinary world had completely lost hope. As his close friend, Dajima Jin feels very sorry every time he thinks of the scene at that time. Although Joichiro's tragedy had his own personal reasons, it was more affected by the overall environment of the culinary industry. Therefore, he understands that the current culinary world must and should reach a time of innovation. But for now, looking at any chef in the world, who can afford it? Who else can lead everyone to create a better era of cooking? Recalling that year, he rejected invitations from 800 major restaurants across the country and chose to work at UNIU Resort. The reason is that he took a fancy to the strength of the UNIU group. I believe that those who will be born to lead a new era in the future will definitely come from Tatsuki Academy, but it wasn't until today that he finally realized that such a person was not actually in Tatsuki, but in this izakaya. Chapter 111, Commander UNIU, the most suitable successor. Zhang Fan, are you still running this place alone? Haven't you hired any helpers? During the conversation, the commander-in-chief used the corner of his eyes to look at the environment around the izakaya. I remember that the last time I came here with my granddaughter Irina, all the work inside and outside the izakaya was done by Zhang Fan himself from beginning to end. There were no human hands around him. It just opened not long ago. In addition, the operating hours are only from 7 p.m. to 12 p.m. Therefore, with Zhang Fan's ability alone, he can indeed take care of the entire izakaya. But the past is different. The business of the current izakaya is obviously much better than last time. Although it may be possible during this period of time, Zhang Fan is still able to cope with it. But you must know that running an izakaya is not easy in itself. It does not mean that you can just use a kitchen knife to chop vegetables and a spoon to cook, preparing ingredients before opening, arranging chairs and tables, cleaning after closing, sorting out bills, etc. There are really a lot of scattered tasks, but for now, Zhang Fan is still busy. Therefore, the confused commander-in-chief couldn't help but ask, "Right, we haven't hired any helpers yet." Zhang Fan nodded directly and admitted in front of the commander-in-chief. Then, "Do you need manpower?" The commander-in-chief's eyes flashed and he continued to ask, "Of course, who would be happy to have more people help with the work?" Zhang Fan responded with a smile, "Good, running an izakaya, it's a good thing if it's busy enough to require manpower. You actually want to recruit some assistant chefs. I can help you by asking Yin to transfer a few experienced chefs from the cooking department at UNIU Resort to assist you." The commander-in-chief was stroking his beard, showing a kind of pampering for his juniors, and he was generous in his heart. He must have hoped that Zhang Fan could go to Tatsuki Academy and work for their Nakare family. However, after being rejected by Zhang Fan last time, the commander-in-chief completely gave up this idea. But despite this, He still hopes that the entire Tatsuki Academy and even the entire Nakare family can be related to Zhang Fan. Even if he cannot win over him, he should still look for opportunities to cooperate with him. After all, he couldn't predict what the future situation would be. Therefore, he wanted to take another gamble and bet the entire Yuan future on Zhang Fan. Commander-in-Chief, don't worry about this. After I return, I will immediately carefully select a few suitable candidates and ask them to come to the Izakaya to assist Zhang Fan in his work. On the side, Dojima Jin instantly understood what the commander-in-chief meant, so he hurriedly made a statement. Unexpectedly, the commander-in-chief and the chief cook, the good show between these two well-known figures in the food industry, still failed to impress Zhang Fan. After hearing this, he shook his head, just like the last time he refused to go to Yuan, and replied softly, "No, I accept your wishes." Refuse? You refused, didn't you just say that you need some help in the kitchen? Yuan Resort is an ancillary industry of Yuan Serio Cooking School. It is said that there are more than a dozen hotels, all operating under the Yuan Resort brand, located in a resort with a beautiful environment. There is even a 5-star luxury hotel, Tatsuki Rikyu, in the culinary department of this hotel. All the chefs are world-class chefs, and they should all have extraordinary influence in the culinary world. As a result, these talents were mobilized and directly used by Zhang Fan. No one would think of rejecting such a beautiful thing, right? Therefore, it would be difficult for Dojima Jin to understand and guess Zhang Fan's thoughts for a while. However, the commander-in-chief acted very calmly, as if he was not surprised at all by Zhang Fan's rejection again. "Yes, I do want some help in the cooking, and all the chefs from Yuan Resort must be talented. Perhaps with their help, my Izakaya business will be more prosperous, and at the same time, I can rely on the resources of Tatsuki and the Nakare family. But let's put it this way, I also have my own principles. I already have some standards in mind for what kind of assistant chef I want to recruit and what kind of manpower I want to recruit. To be honest, maybe the chefs at Yuan Resort are indeed very capable, but they probably won't meet my requirements. So, let's end this topic for now. There's no need to continue talking about it. I see. Perhaps I am too anxious. I am so eager to seek opportunities to cooperate with you that I temporarily ignore some objective conditions." Zhang Fan's voice seemed a bit gentle, but from his words, it can be seen that he seems to look down on the group of chefs who came out of the resort. However, the commander-in-chief was not angry, but showed admiration in his eyes. In the end, no one continued to talk about this topic. Tatsuki Academy and Izakaya also missed an opportunity to cooperate, but whether it is Zhang Fan, the commander-in-chief, or Jin Dojima, they all know very well that some future situations may force them to cooperate. Finally, it was 12 o'clock in the night. The commander-in-chief and Dojima Jin had no choice but to leave and did not continue to stay at the Izakaya. Silver, what do you think? Will he be able to take on this important role in the future? On the way back, the commander-in-chief suddenly asked Jin Dojima. His voice was a little erratic, and his thoughts went back to that night, the night when he issued an expulsion order to Nakare Thistle and drove him completely out of Tatsuki. His cooking skills are comparable to or even better than Seiba Joichiro's. However, there is one difference. If Keibo had had such an awareness, it would not have led to tragedy. So, to a certain extent, I think the person who can really lead a new era of cooking in the future will most likely be him. Dojima Jin, after thinking for a while, said the thoughts in his heart truthfully come out. No, he can definitely carry the banner of the new era. I have firmly believed this since the last time I went to the Izakaya. When the commander-in-chief heard this, he sighed deeply. I mean, can he take on the important task of leading Tatsuki Academy? Commander, Tatsuki Academy, how is it possible? He is not from the Nakare family, so how can he? No, how can he be qualified to lead Tatsuki? Could it be that, commander-in-chief, you want to? When Dojima Jin heard this, his expression almost changed with fright, but in the end he understood something and looked at the commander-in-chief in disbelief. Chapter 112. Son-in-law? Grandson-in-law? As the former genius of Yuan Nakamura, Thistle's relationship with Tatsuki Academy has always been very delicate. The Nakare family, which believes in the elite education system, may also follow the rule of those who are capable will take over when it comes to heirs. Of course, there is another possibility. The commander-in-chief's biological son, Nakare Munui, who also has the blood of the clan, voluntarily gave up his status as heir, but, one way or another there is a condition that cannot be ignored, that is, the talent of God's tongue is an extremely painful curse for the host, but for the Nakare family, it is obviously a unique existence. Having this name can represent the honor of the family. Therefore, due to various reasons, the inheritance rights of the Nakare family eventually fell to the separate family represented by Irina's mother. In fact, in Neon country, what really matters is not bloodline, but surname. Sometimes when there is no heir, an adopted son, son-in-law, grandson-in-law, etc. will become the heirs. Therefore, it is not difficult to speculate that there was a time when the general manager should have been very optimistic about Nakamura Itsuki while marrying him into the Nakare family. He also hoped that he would take over his position as commander-in-chief in the future and lead the entire Totsuki Academy, later. As everyone knows, because he adopted an extreme education for Nakare Irina as a result, he completely disappointed the commander-in-chief and was expelled from Totsuki Academy. Even all the information about him has been officially erased, completely lost in the dust of history. As if there is no such person in the entire Totsuki Academy. However, in the original plot, Nakare Thistle finally regained the position of commander-in-chief in another way that everyone expected. The reason why he was able to successfully seize the throne was that the conflicts and internal problems among UNIU students had not been resolved for a long time, which led to the 10 heroes turning against each other collectively at the most critical moment. But everyone also knows that the most fundamental reason is that the Nakare family really has no heirs. In fact, in the beginning, it was supposed to be time for someone as old as the commander-in-chief to retire and step down, but while he still insists on serving as the commander-in-chief is not that he is greedy for power, but that after retiring, Irina's current strength is still unable to support the entire family and Totsuki Academy. But on the other hand, UNIU's current situation requires a talented person to lead UNIU again and make changes. Therefore, the appearance of Nakare Thistle gave everyone hope. Of course, if nothing unexpected happens, even if Nakare Thistle seizes the throne and secures the position of commander-in-chief, Irina will still be the best candidate for successor. But if you can become the grandson-in-law of the commander-in-chief and the husband of Irina in the future, you will also have the opportunity to take over the property and resources of the entire Nakare family. Thinking of this, Dojima Jin's heart inevitably became a little complicated. However, there are still many uncertain factors in letting Zhang Fan lead UNIU. And this is also an issue and matter within the commander-in-chief's family. As a bystander, even if you had some ideas, it was difficult for him to raise them in front of the commander-in-chief. Well, maybe not just the entire culinary world in the near future. I'm afraid even this Neon country's one tea house cooking school will undergo a complete change. Miso ramen. It is one of the traditional delicacies of Neon country and represents the essence of Neon country's food culture. Every time you taste this delicacy, you can not only feel the rich Japanese style and cultural atmosphere, but also experience the Neon people's pursuit of food and respect for tradition. Now, use some minced meat, and mix it with bean sprouts, onions, minced garlic, red ginger, etc. Finally, spread a layer of cooked noodles on the bottom of the bowl and add the garnishes on top. Pour in the cooked miso soup base until the soup just covers the noodles. How to say? In the cold and silent night of Jixinglia, it would be a blessing to have such a steaming bowl of miso ramen. Okay, Mrs. Winksu, this is what I created. Kohei Ryu, second revision, super delicious miso ramen. Yukihira Soma, who had just made miso ramen with some ingredients in the kitchen, hurriedly pulled off the towel. Then, in front of Amidao Fumio, he told the name of this dish that was full of trunafu, and he was looking forward to the next judging session. Miso ramen is just miso ramen. Why are you talking so much? Seeing Xingping Soma's appearance, Mrs. Fumzu was speechless. However, she couldn't help but be a little surprised when she thought that he was able to make a bowl of miso ramen on the spot using the few ingredients left in the kitchen. Compared with other miso ramen, the bowl of miso ramen in front of me has a salty taste and a sweet aftertaste after being fully mixed, especially the lump of minced ginger, which is a masterpiece. It seems like this kid may pass my test on the first try. After muttering something to himself, Amidao Fumio came to his senses for a moment, then quickly took a mouthful of thick soup with a small spoon and drank it gently. Take a sip of soup instantly, you can know its taste, which is particularly full. This miso soup base is not just boiling water and salt in the traditional sense. Instead, the juice is made from seafood such as kombu, chicken and tonkatsu, and finally all impurities are filtered out and only salt is added for seasoning. Even if you just take a sip, You will feel like you are full of collagen, even not exaggerating. If you accidentally get a little soup on your hands will still feel sticky afterwards, but after drinking such a rich soup, I didn't feel any meaty smell, nor did I feel greasy and disgusting. On the contrary, it felt very comfortable. Black garlic? Although it's not very obvious, it must be black garlic, right? Finally, Amidao Fumio swallowed, and after careful analysis, he quickly thought of something. The so-called black garlic is actually a kind of fermented garlic. Because it has lost the stimulating rush of fresh garlic, the garlic aroma it emits will become much softer at the same time. Due to the Maillard reaction, the water and fat content in black garlic have decreased, but the sugar and trace elements have significantly increased. Experimental data shows that the polyphenols in black garlic increase 10 times. Spice it up. Sometimes, it's just that magical, even. A little bit of seasoning, even black garlic, which is considered a dark ingredient, can be the highlight of a bowl of ramen. This bowl of Japanese miso ramen is indeed one of the few ramen dishes that I have ever tasted in my life that deserves recognition. After saying this, Amidao Fumio couldn't help but look more appreciative when he looked at Yukihira Soma. Chapter 113. Do you have a man outside? 303. This is the room number that Yukihira Soma stayed in the Jinsei dormitory after passing the trial. Although he is a bit of a noob, he is able to make a bowl of miso ramen with rich soup and delicious taste by using the ingredients available in the kitchen. On this point, Amidao Fumio was very satisfied with him. An interesting boy is here this time. Looking at Soma Yukihira, who was holding the room key and humming a tune from time to time while walking up the stairs, Fumio Amidao here had a slight idea. However, at the moment Soma turned around, she seemed to see Ichiro Seiba again, who stayed in dormitory room 303 more than 20 years ago? Huh? Is it my imagination? Rubbing his temples with his hands, the expression on Amidao Fumio's face became increasingly weird. Ji Zhangliao. It was originally a very ordinary Tatsuki boarding facility. Over the past 20 years or so, a group of boarding students, including Seiba Joichiro, Dojima Jin, Nakamura Hisashi, and others, have been using Shikuji to seize resources, stripping off the corporate body of the academy. Since then, Jixingliao has been adopting an independent accounting system and ushered in a real golden period of development. Of course, talented people emerge from generation to generation, but nowadays, Jixingliao is much in decline compared to what it was more than 20 years ago. Especially this group of new boarding students, such as Yuki Yoshino, Ryako Sakuki, Megumi Tadakoro, Shunna Musaki, etc. With their talents and qualifications, if they want to surpass Jin Dojima's class, the probability is higher than Fumio Amidao. Here it is almost zero. Fortunately, there is still a 7th seed of the 10 elites, who is barely holding on to the facade of Jixingliao. Otherwise, I really don't know what to do, Alice. I don't know when this Jixing dormitory will be able to regain its former glory. After thinking about it, Amidao Fumio couldn't help but put away his heavy heart, stretched himself, and prepared to go back to sleep. Crunch. After a slight sound, the door to the Jixingliao dormitory was slowly opened. At this time, Tadakoro Megumi, who came back from the Izakaya, saw that the dormitory manager Amidao Fumio was still awake. He was so frightened that he quickly hid the box of wagashi in his hand behind his back. Interesting. And Wangsu, you haven't slept yet? Well, a transfer student just came over to stay in Jixing dormitory. I stood up a little to receive him. Wangsu walked towards Yan Suahu, and began to notice that her face seemed uneasy, and asked worriedly, "What's wrong with you? You don't usually go out by yourself, and you came back to the dormitory so late? Is there something important?" No, I was just hungry, so I couldn't help but run outside and eat a bowl of veal rice." Tian Suahu couldn't help but glance around, as if he was eager to find an excuse to leave this place, and her pretty and innocent little face actually began to show a faint blush. She obviously couldn't lie and felt a little guilty. "You can't admit that you go to an izakaya just because you miss Zhang's cooking, right? Eel rice. You are a master of local cuisine. Can the ordinary eel rice impress you? Furthermore, you sneaked out at 7 o'clock in the evening, and now you come back after 12 o'clock at night. I think, even if you finish eating the eel rice, it won't take so long." How could the experienced Wangsu be easily deceived by Tadakoro's clumsy acting skills? What's more, Tazo's hands are always hidden behind her back, always protecting something. Yes, there is an izakaya owner who makes eel rice that is very delicious, so I stayed there for a while before coming back. Tian Suhu felt uncomfortable being stared at by Mrs. Wingsu, so she could only explain, but she didn't know that if some things were explained more deliberately, they would arouse others' vigilance and suspicion. Sure enough, after hearing these words, Wangsu began to squint his eyes slightly, and finally seemed to understand something, and couldn't help but reveal a sly smile. To Sako, you have to tell the truth, do you have a lover outside, someone you like? Tadakoro. Wei was stunned for a moment. Immediately, she heard a bang and her face turned red and hot. Then he shook his head and replied in a hesitant voice, no. It's really just going out to eat. A shy little girl like me would panic when talking to a boy. How could I have a lover? Even if I did, I wouldn't sneak away at night to go on a date or something. Although she said that, at this moment, the figure of Zhang Fan suddenly appeared in her mind for some reason. Every time she thought of Zhang Fan's superb cooking skills, his gentle personality and charming smile, she really couldn't forget it. Really? Then why are your cheeks so red? I am also a person who has experienced this. Facing the complicated world, at the age of 15 or 16, it is easy for me to become restless. We are often attracted to each other by each other's charm and become each other's comfort zone. At the moment, it's the beginning of school. You, who are ranked last, will definitely feel uneasy and irritable, but during this period of time, you have never explained everything to us, the staff of Jizing Lao. Instead, go to an izakaya or something and ask the owner to help you solve your problems. Tadakoro, maybe you don't understand that this impulse to rely on others is exactly the love of youth. Taking a deep look at the shy Tadakoro, Amidao Fumio said meaningfully, I think back then, she was also a beautiful woman, and she once had a sweetheart and a passionate love. It's just that time makes people grow old. She eventually became a scrawny old woman. And Wangsu, things are not what you think. You didn't go to the izakaya with us for the celebration banquet last time, so you must not know how powerful the owner Zhang is. She, Tian Suahu, does have a serious sense of dependence on Zhang Fan, and this feeling of just thinking about being able to rely on him when facing difficulties. Is it really a kind of love? As Amidao Fumio said, this kind of thing is absolutely confusing to Tian Suahu, whose emotional experience is as blank as a blank slate. However, in order to avoid misunderstanding, she still carefully told some recent events in the izakaya. Well, from what you said, the owner of the izakaya is actually a respectable chef. After hearing the end, Amidao Fumio was a little surprised and couldn't help but lower his head in thought. Chapter 114 Izakaya, Upgrade. Ding dong, successfully signed in once. Ling dong, congratulations to the host for getting an opportunity to upgrade and decorate the izakaya. Do you want to use it now? For a good restaurant, the chef's cooking skills are very important, but without a decent and unique dining environment, there will be a lot less fun when enjoying delicious food. Of course, this does not mean that the higher the environment of the izakaya, the better. Give a simple example. One day, a breakfast shop downstairs in the community began to be decorated in the style of a high-end restaurant, although what is sold is still the popular steamed buns, fried dough sticks, tofu puffs, etc. Will you still go in and buy it? Most people probably wouldn't dare, and would still whisper in their hearts, oh my goodness, with a decoration like this, should a breakfast cost one day's salary? Therefore, when decorating the restaurant environment, the most important thing is to consider the target audience. Without thinking, Zhang Fan directly used this upgrade opportunity. After all, with a business gradually booming, it is indeed necessary to expand the scale of today's izakayas, especially the layout of the space, including the increase in the number of tables and chairs, the reasonable arrangement of the dining environment, etc. It is best to replan. In short, there is only one principle. It would definitely be better if it could accommodate more diners. Ling dong, according to the host's wishes, the izakaya will now be upgraded. The upgrade content is as follows. An additional area of 50 square meters was added, the first underground floor of the food warehouse was opened, and the internal dining environment was simply upgraded. This upgrade will take 24 hours. During this period, the izakaya will not be open to the public. Please ask the host to close for one day. Closed for one day. When Zhang Fan heard this, he shrugged and felt helpless. Since he came to this world, his izakaya seems to have never closed down, but this is okay. Just treat it as a gift from the system to relax yourself. In the morning, the sun is shining brightly. The sky was a clear blue without a cloud. Every flower and grass in Tatsuki Academy looks full of vitality under the sunshine. At this time, In a cooking classroom in the higher education department, Tadakoro was a little listless. Even though he was encouraged by Zhang Fan last night, when he returned to Jixinglao and lay on the bed, he still couldn't fall asleep. That uneasy feeling enveloped her heart like a demon, making her panic. Oh, it really doesn't work. I'm still too nervous for the first class after school starts, Tian Suhu said to himself in a panic every time she thought about the fate of being expelled from school if she failed to pass this test. Her delicate body tensed up later. In order to relieve the tension, she could only write the word on the palm of her hand, and then put it into her mouth and made a swallowing motion. Ding, ding, ding. As the class bell rang, all the noisy sounds around him suddenly stopped. Then, a steady figure walked into the cooking classroom and slowly came to the podium. Although he looked a little old, his hair was combed very carefully and there was no mess at all, and those deep-set, cloudy eyes seemed to be telling the vicissitudes of time. The chef's formal attire that belongs exclusively to Toyuki makes his whole person look energetic. Afterwards, he looked around at the students below, cleared his throat, and introduced himself. Good morning, classmates. I am the lecturer for this practical test, Roland Chappell. As soon as he finished speaking, the whole cooking classroom was in an uproar. All UNIU freshmen looked at Chappell in disbelief, their faces full of shock, panic and, at a loss. This chef, who serves as a lecturer in the Tatsuki French cuisine department, is famous for being strict in the academy. However, for all assessment tests conducted by him, the student pass rate is very low. In addition, he always had a tight face and never smiled, so the students called him a chef who never smiles. Ruined. In the first class, I actually met Professor Shaper. With my current cooking skills, how can I satisfy him with food? My UNIU career seems to be over here. Mom, Zhang Fan, what should I do? Seeing Chappell on the stage, Tadakoro, who was eating human, was so frightened that his soul almost flew out. Like an unconscious zombie, she had calculated everything, but she never expected that she would be so unlucky to meet this stern lecturer. Quiet, pay attention to the order in the classroom. Seeing the chaos in the scene, Chappell frowned slightly, then he waved his hand to signal all students present to quiet down. Then, he picked up an ink pen, turned around and skillfully wrote the specific recipe of Burgundy red wine beef stew on the whiteboard. Today, we are going to test a local French dish, beef stew in Burgundy red wine. I have written the recipe of the dish in detail on the whiteboard. As for the ingredients required for the dish, I have also prepared them well in advance. However, due to some restrictions on the ingredients on site, it is impossible for you to completely reproduce it 100%. Therefore, I allow you to freely use it and make changes without departing from this dish. In short, everything is based on my judgment. If, after changing the food, it still doesn't satisfy me, then I will still give you the worst review. By the way, tell you more. In my place, there are only the worst A-level evaluations and the best A-level evaluations. That is to say, you will either pass successfully or be eliminated directly. There will be no B, C, or D grade evaluations, so you will have mixed credits. Say it. The whole audience was shocked again. Everyone knew that Chappell was very strict, but they didn't expect that his judgment standards would be so extreme, and Beyond Suahu, who kept swallowing the word human in her stomach, was stunned for a moment after hearing what Chappell said. Beef stew in Burgundy wine. This dish, isn't it the same dish that shopkeeper Zhang took the initiative to cook for me last time at the Izakaya? Recalling that after finishing the pot of red wine stewed beef, Zhang Fan deliberately explained many details of the cooking method in front of her. Among them, he repeatedly emphasized the method of quickly softening beef. Could it be that shopkeeper Zhang has the ability to predict the future? It's 9 o'clock in the morning. You should hurry up and get ready. After 2 hours, I will review everyone's cooking. Any cooking that exceeds this time range will be considered unqualified. Finally, as Chappell announced the start of the assessment, all the freshmen got busy. Chapter 115 Big Names in French Cuisine. Beef stew in red wine. This is a special dish that is emblematic and iconic of the region. It tells the story of Burgundy in France, which has been a famous wine-producing region since ancient Roman times. In this dish, the two main ingredients are the famous wines of the Burgundy region and the local Charolais cattle. No exaggeration, Burgundy is definitely the brightest pearl in the French wine crown. The unique calcareous clay and rocks that have been baptized by history brew a rich and tough red wine. It is obviously the most perfect combination to stew with beef. Charolais cattle are one of the best breeds of cattle in France, Produced in the Charolais and Nièvre regions from the central west to the southeast, the coat color of this kind of cattle is usually white. The body is tall and strong, the forehead is wide, the face is short, the neck is short and meaty, and it can produce a large amount of high-quality meat with low fat content. Although there are now endless recipes for red wine braised beef, each with its own twist. However, most gourmet experts still prefer to use beef shoulder blades. Only this part of the meat is muscular, rich in collagen, and alternately fat and lean, and the meat will slowly decompose during the long simmering, releasing collagen and making the soup richer. At this moment, I saw that Tadakoro was preparing various ingredients according to the cooking methods provided by Professor Chappelle. She then used her skilled knife skills, cut onions, carrots, and celery into cubes, and cut beef into sections and set aside. Then, put the chopped beef, salt, bay leaves, star anise, cinnamon, black peppercorns, etc. into the container. Then pour in the red wine to soak and marinate. After marinating, take out the beef and drain it. Wrap it with kitchen paper and press it to absorb the excess soup on the surface of the beef. Finally, put the processed beef into the pan and fry until both sides are brown. Then pour the chopped vegetables and seasonings into the casserole. Stir fry briefly with olive oil. Continue to spread the fried beef evenly. Pour in red wine. Chivas Regal and a small amount. No, that's a lot. Tian Suo Wei. Oh, no, I accidentally spilled the entire bottle of salt. Seeing the crystal clear beef in front of her, but covered with salt, she could only hold her head in her hands and go crazy, almost having a nervous breakdown from this scene. Originally, all you had to do to make this dish was follow the cooking instructions on the whiteboard and finish it seriously. In addition, she has been under the guidance of Zhang Fan, so theoretically speaking, Tian Suo will be very good at this French cuisine. This is indeed the case. She did all the previous work very well. The bad thing happened at the most critical moment. She accidentally made another fatal mistake. What to do? What should I do? If we try again, I'm afraid it will be too late. But after adding so much salt, if you follow the recipe provided by Professor Chappelle, it will definitely fail. Thinking of this, she hurriedly removed the excess salt grains from the beef, but the more she panicked, the more confused she became. She was very afraid that she would be expelled from UNIU for getting an A-level evaluation this time, and she was also afraid that she would live up to the expectations of Zhang Fan and the folks in her hometown. However, she was still desperate. After all, how could such a mistake be salvageable? It seems someone has encountered a problem. On the podium, Shaper, who is looking around at the students' every move, accidentally saw the bewildered Tadakoro and couldn't help but be stunned. Shopkeeper Zhang, you said, at this time, if it were you, what would you do? The particularly desperate Tadakoro Wei finally closed her eyes. She held back the tears that were about to fall and murmured to herself in a trembling voice, Tadakoro, do you still remember what I told you when we were at the Izakaya? If you are under a stressful situation and sprinkle a whole bottle of salt on the beef, there are actually ways to make changes, such as, at this moment, a magnetic voice appeared in her mind. Afterwards, various scenes with Zhang Fan were played in her mind like scenes from a movie. Could it be that, opening her hazy bright eyes, Tian Suo Wei came back to her senses? It was as if she had grasped a life-saving straw. Regaining hope and confidence snapped. There was a loud bang, but she slapped her face hard with both hands. Okay. Then use this method. Finally, Tadakoro, who was completely awake and calmed down, continued cooking burgundy red wine beef stew, and her whole process from fear, to despair, to regaining confidence, was watched by Chappelle one by one. It's really interesting. When faced with difficulties, you can quickly change your mentality and make changes calmly. This is the quality that a good chef should possess. I think this test won't disappoint me so much. In traditional recipes, the time for soaking the beef in red wine is more than 12 hours. The reason why it takes so long is that it will be better when stewed when the beef is soaked with a flavor of spices and red wine. Of course, in the era of fast food, if a dish takes too long, it will not be competitive in the market at all. Therefore, burgundy red wine beef stew has also been improved by countless chefs in the long history now. From preparing the ingredients to the final product, it usually only takes about 2 hours. Add the spice bundle, 2 cloves of garlic, the red wine beef stock that has been set aside, and add the tomatoes. Then, put the pot into the preheated oven and bake for 1 hour. Only by stewing slowly can the moisture inside be completely locked in. During the stewing process, the red wine will slowly evaporate and completely blend into the soup base. Then cook the freshly prepared vegetables, Put them on a plate, pour red wine soup over them, and sprinkle with a little parsley to enhance the flavor. In this way, the soup is completely finished. This approach, I remember, seems to have come from Julia Child. After watching the entire process of making the soup, Shaper fell into deep thought. In Tadakoro, he saw another giant in the French cuisine world. She is a well-known American cuisine writer in the culinary industry. She once studied French cuisine in Paris because of his deep love for Burgundy red wine beef stew. In 1963, he demonstrated in detail how to cook red wine beef stew on WGBH Public Television's French Chef series. After that, once the show was broadcast, this dish became a sensation and was regarded by countless people as one of the classic representatives of French cuisine. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116, Trapel's Smile, the reality of Tazo's cuisine. Time come to the review stage. All the freshmen present completed the cooking, and after being reviewed by Shaper, each received a score. If you look closely, you can see that the sweet red wine is completely absorbed by the beef. After enjoying the sauna steaming for more than an hour, the fat from the beef melted into the vegetables. The meat was soft and tender, and the mellow fragrance was enough to make people intoxicated. Afterwards, Chapel slowly opened his eyes. With his sharp eyes, he looked at the last freshman, Tasakuro, and said, "You seem to have changed a lot of the recipes I provided. Is my cooking that bad in your eyes? Or, you want to challenge my authority?" The last words made Tazo feel timid and tremble all over, but she gritted her teeth and mustered up the courage to reply, "No, Lecturer Chapel, I didn't mean to challenge you. I just think that Burgundy red wine beef stew is a local cuisine from the French countryside. Then, when it comes to some ingredients and methods, it's best to retain some original ideas and principles. That is to say, in my eyes, the real thing about a dish is that it should be improved without destroying its original taste." You think so? Chapel, after listening to Dion Moshi's explanation, did not show any expression, but asked calmly. But he looked at Dion Suahu as if he was frightened, and he didn't dare to answer his question anymore. In desperation, he didn't say anything more, but lowered his head and observed the food. Then, sharp-eyed Shaper, as if he thought of something, he quickly picked up the knife and gently pressed the beef. With a pop sound, the soup inside the beef splashed out instantly due to external pressure. The whole piece of beef sank quickly at a speed visible to the naked eye, and then emitted a richer meat aroma. So soft. How could this beef be stewed so soft? I remember that you encountered some problems halfway through. Did you successfully solve all those problems? And what's the matter with the meat quality of this beef? It takes 2 hours of stewing time to make it so soft. At this time, Chapel hadn't tasted it yet, but he had an inexplicable feeling in his heart. I always feel that the cooking done by this new student in front of me may be far beyond his level. Finally, with complicated thoughts, he hurriedly cut a small piece of beef with a knife and fork, and couldn't wait to taste it. When it comes to delicious food, everyone can tell a lot, but if a group of people discuss this topic, they are likely to become red-faced. Therefore, I often feel that the encounter between food and people is actually the same as the encounter between people, and it is also about fate. Burgundy, that damn place is terrible. This was the truest thought in Chapel's heart. When he was a child living in the Burgundy region of France, he has shown great talent in cooking since he was a child, and he became a famous chef in the French cuisine world at a young age. Later, he was hired by Tatsuki Academy as a lecturer. From then on, far away from home, he gradually understood that the place where he lived as a child was always the best holy land. Every plant and tree in Burgundy, as well as the undulating mountains far and near, as well as the beautiful pictures composed of matsutake, cheese, snails and other delicacies, whenever he recalled it, he always had an unforgettable emotion. Many times, he would try to cook dishes from his hometown, but maybe his mentality has changed, or maybe he has gradually forgotten the taste of his hometown. No matter how hard he tried, or how many times he cooked it, he could never recreate the taste of the past. At the same time, I can no longer find the feeling that one bite can warm my whole body and make me smile. Upon entering, there was a puff, puff, puff sound immediately. That is the sound made by the beef spreading easily in the mouth along the texture and every ounce of soup that overflows is permeated with a fragrant aroma of wine. Enjoy it with the potatoes and mushrooms that have absorbed the rich sauce. The red wine sauce penetrates into every inch of the meat. The solid meat texture and the slightly sour taste of wine are constantly blending together, bringing a strange kind of satisfaction. At this moment, just close your eyes and feel it with your heart. You can imagine the beautiful vineyards in pastoral French style. The soup is rich, the beef is tender and flavorful, and the flavors of all the ingredients can be fully integrated to complement each other. As a result, Trapel's chewing movement slowed down and began to slowly feel the mellow taste of the beef being completely crushed in his mouth and then gradually dissipating. This smell. After swallowing, Chapel's eyes showed shock immediately. He hurriedly cut another small piece of beef and tasted it carefully. As soon as he bit into the beef with his teeth, every cell in his body started to stir. Yes, that's the taste. It was the taste of beef stew in red wine that he tasted when he was a child. Gradually, he remembered the pictures of his hometown. The first is the gentler slope, where many grapes are planted and there are many vineyards. There are no fences or boundaries as far as the eye can see, just rolling green vineyards and an occasional house, and the beautiful pastoral scenery made Chapel begin to feel happy at this time. After all, the beauty of Burgundy is neither stunning nor thrilling. Only the warm daily life and the little things that can touch the heartstrings, which are indescribable. It all started with that red wine beef stew. I finally found it. This kind of Burgundy red wine beef stew is what I have been pursuing all my life. After recovering from the artistic conception, Chapel could not help but grinning slightly. In the end, he couldn't hide his inner joy at all and burst into laughter. A chef who was called the chef who never smiles could not help but smile happily because he tasted the taste of his hometown at this moment. Then, regardless of the reaction and gaze of Dion Moshi next to him, he continued one bite after another, finishing the entire plate of beef stew in red wine, and was stunned to finish it all. Even if there was a little bit of gravy left on the plate, he ate it up with mashed potatoes as a side dish. Obviously, this French dish Tadakoro successfully embodied the essence and deeply moved Chapel. Chapter 117. Dion Suahu is going to be expelled from school? Liquor, soft and delicate, gently brush off the fat on the meat and bring out the delicious flavor in the meat. Before he could recover, a strong fragrance had already filled his mouth. Perhaps it is the aroma of Pinot Noir red wine that gives the soul of this dish, making it a romance that only the French can express. Unexpected, your red wine braised beef dish is beyond my level, lecturer. Chapel slowly opened his eyes, and after looking at the empty plate, he couldn't help but sigh. Immediately afterwards he raised his head for a moment and glanced at Tazo as a lecturer and Tatsuki. Even if I want to talk about some issues face to face at this moment, I still feel ashamed. But in the end, he still said shamelessly, after the red wine has been simmered for a long time, the tannins inside can actually slowly soften the fat of the beef. So, the most important and exciting thing about this dish is the tender texture of the beef. Just now, did you make a small mistake? But in the end, the meat of the beef stewed in red wine is softer than anyone else's, and in terms of taste, it is even better than the recipes I provide. Can you tell me something? What method did you use to make this dish? This lecturer. Chapel, I added some more honey to the beef. Hearing Chapel's words, Tasako was in a daze, and then she didn't dare to neglect, and hurriedly stood up and replied softly, honey. Upon hearing this, Roland Chapel immediately began to think deeply. His eyes flickered, and he soon showed an expression of sudden realization. That's it, honey is rich in glucose and fructose. It tastes sweet and moist. It can increase the taste of beef and make it more delicious. At the same time, honey also contains trace amounts of protease, which can break down the protein in beef and make the beef tender and smooth. I have to say that at this time, Shaper had some admiration for Tadakoro. After all, being able to soften beef with honey is not very creative, but it is enough to show that she has some different opinions on this dish. So, he nodded with satisfaction. Then I picked up her personal score sheet. It didn't matter if I didn't look at the results. I was shocked when I saw it, but it can be seen that Tadakoro's past performance at Tatsuki Academy has never been rated as A level. He even got promoted to the higher level department with poor results from last place. In other words, in this assessment, if he gives the worst A level score, then she, Tadakoro, can just pack up her things and get out of Tatsuki completely. Such results. Seeing this, Chapel couldn't help but murmur in his heart. In order to prove his idea, before giving Tadakoro Megumi a score, he had to continue asking, besides honey, is there any other way to make beef softer? black tea, tangerine, peel, beer, hawthorn. These things can make the beef more tender. Among them, black tea has the best effect on softening beef and is also the most useful. Sensing that there was a hint of suspicion in Chappell's eyes, Tadokoro responded quickly after Roland Chappell listened. His mind couldn't help but start racing, and he began to think about whether these ingredients could really make the meat and texture of beef softer. Today, it was an eye-opener for me, but judging from your past achievements, I'm afraid you're not good enough to cook this kind of cuisine, or have such unique insights, right? Finally, he wanted to understand and sighed deeply in his heart. He was already certain that such a dish could never have been made by Tadokoro. Lecturer Chappell, I really can't hide this kind of thing from you. It is true that the recipe for this red wine braised beef dish was taught to me by an Izakaya owner. After being exposed by Chappell, Tadokoro Megumi felt extremely embarrassed. After scratching the back of his head with his hand, he could only reply truthfully, Izakaya? Could it be that the owner of an Izakaya has such a profound understanding of French cuisine? The more Chappell listened, the more confused he became. Right, shopkeeper Zhang, he is an amazing chef. In this world, there seems to be no dish that can stump him. Later, Tian Suahu talked about Zhang Fan's deeds especially for this red wine beef stew dish. She even told her the recipe and many unique insights that Zhang Fan taught her. Yeah, there is a chef in this world who knows French cuisine so well. At this time, listening to Tasakuro's words, Chappell finally understood. He admitted that in the field of French cuisine, judging from this red wine beef stew, he was indeed far inferior to Zhang Fan. He's a chef that I admire. When it comes to cooking, the tenderness, love and people-oriented cooking concepts shown by shopkeeper Zhang have a profound impact on me. I'm sorry, Lecturer Chappell, I deceived you. In the end, Tian Suahu still did not hide her admiration for Zhang Fan, but I also understood that at this moment, I was using the cooking he made to deal with Chappell, but it turned out to be exposed. I am afraid this assessment is hopeless. Indeed, this kind of food, if it is made by someone else, it cannot truly reflect your own strength, but you can understand the essence and methods in such a short period of time. And you can also understand that real cooking only needs to make people feel happy. Actually, you have such an awareness, which means you can still be saved. Anyway, work hard. After saying that, Shaper directly wrote down his own score on Bion Moshi's personal score sheet. Yes, lecturer, even if I am kicked out of school, I will never be discouraged. I will still maintain my original belief and continue to work hard towards becoming a chef. After receiving her grades from Chappell, Tazaway felt like the sky was falling, but she suppressed her tears and pretended to be strong, patting her chest in front of him, her eyes full of determination. Drop out at this time. It's too early for you to drop out of school. Looking at Yan Suahu, who seemed to have misunderstood something, Chappell just said helplessly, "Why, my grade is not an E, but an A." I lowered my head and looked at the big A in the latest column of the score sheet. It was so dazzling and eye-catching. Involuntarily, Tian Suahu was shocked. Chapter 118: The Encounter with Nakari Arena. 3 whole years Tian Suahu struggled to spend every day in a state of panic. In every assessment in the past 3 years, her own performance has always been the lowest level rating. Occasionally, she has performed a little beyond normal and received a D-level rating, but let alone an A-level rating. She had never received even a B or C-level rating during the entire junior high school period. However, just today, she received the highest A grade in the hands of the toughest lecturer, Roland Chappell, and successfully passed the entrance examination. It all seems like a dream, but so real. The content of this assessment is to follow the recipes I provided and complete them carefully. You just think this recipe is not good, so you copy someone else's recipe and make a more delicious red wine braised beef. So, I have no reason to judge you as unqualified, Shaper explained after speaking. He stood up and left the cooking classroom, but before taking a step, he continued, "Actually, your cooking is full of tenderness. This is very valuable. After all, this place in you and I will always only educate some knowledge and cooking skills, and pay more attention to the development of personal abilities. However, what is the true meaning of cooking? What is real cooking? What is a real chef? We are unable to provide correct guidance and education for these problems. Every year, many students leave UAU, whether they graduate successfully or drop out halfway. Although They have great talents, they may not be able to live a satisfactory life in the future, and they may not even be able to continue to shine in the entire culinary world. In the final analysis, personal abilities are important, and so is the platform, but a correct education method, I think, is an important factor affecting the future development of chefs, in a sense, that Izakaya may be more noble than Totsuki Academy, and that mysterious shop owner might be an excellent lecturer. This time, your cooking has successfully passed the assessment, but I hope you can change and grow in the future. I believe that as long as you continue to maintain this gentle heart towards cooking, you will be able to profoundly influence the entire Totsuki Academy in the future. No, it's the entire culinary world. After saying this, Roland Chapel left, but looking at the back of the person who was getting away. Tasako way over there was holding the grade sheet tightly in her hand, stunned and at a loss at this time. She couldn't understand what Chapel meant, but when there was a coup in the future by Nagi Karuhisa and she was asked to make a difficult choice, she understood the other meaning of today's words. Early morning, the sun shines through the thin clouds, shining on the land that has just regained all its vitality in the southwest of the city. Here is the lively and prosperous Akihabara area. If you look carefully, on both sides of each street, there are countless delicious ramen restaurants, comic book stores, toy stores, game arcades, handicraft exhibitions, etc. And there are also sexy maid cafes. Of course there are many fun places, but the crowds who come to Akihabara are as densely packed as ants. So many times, pedestrians are squeezed into the narrow space on both sides, shoulder to shoulder. This impetuous feeling will inevitably make everyone feel a little suffocated. However, among the vast crowd, Arina Nakiri was actually wrapped in heavy clothes. The weather wasn't very cold to begin with, but she wanted to wrap up every part of her body. It was really funny. Moreover, she also wore a cute cap and a mask on her face, covering her mouth, but even so she still felt uneasy. So she took out another pair of dark black sunglasses and quickly put them on. How about it? In this way, no one will recognize me. Right behind him, Nito Fisako looked at Arina's funny appearance and couldn't help but cover his mouth with a smile and said, "Miss, don't worry, it's very difficult for someone you know to recognize you when you're dressed like this. Good, then. Keep walking." Afterwards, Arina continued to arrange her cap and sunglasses. Then he looked around cautiously, and then took anxious steps into a nearby comic book store. This store is not very eye-catching. Its appearance is relatively simple, even a little old, and it has a sense of age, but its charm lies in its ability to attract people who have a deep love for comics. As soon as you enter the store, you can immediately smell the faint fragrance of ink. If you take a closer look, you will see that the decoration in the store is very simple. The walls are covered with various comic posters and paintings, and the display shelves are neatly arranged with various comic books. Whether it's classic comic works or works by new cartoonists, you can find them all here, so much so that Arina, who just came in, was dazzled. Suddenly, she saw a comic book Magic Academy HXH on the display cabinet, and her eyes lit up. She came forward and quickly stood on tiptoes, trying to reach out and pick up the comic book. But it may be that the location is relatively high, and even with a lot of effort, it is still out of reach. "Let me get it for you." At this moment, a figure appeared behind her. Then, under her gaze, he stretched out his hand and took down the Magic Academy HXH comic book. "Thank you." Arina thanked her quickly after taking the beloved comic book. "Need not, it's just a piece of cake, Arina." You are the familiar voice made Arina pause for a moment. She was so frightened that she quickly raised her head and looked up, only to find that the person standing behind her was indeed the bartender Zhang Fan. "Arina, what a coincidence. I can meet you in Akihabara. Is this the so-called fate?" "No, you got the wrong person. I'm not the Arina you said. Please don't look at me like that." Arina's pretty little face instantly turned red with embarrassment. Thanks to her wearing a mask and sunglasses, it was hard to notice. Unexpectedly, as soon as she finished speaking, Zhang Fan covered her forehead. What are you doing?" Arina asked shyly and anxiously. "You don't have a fever?" Zhang Fan said angrily. "I said, it's not shameful to like such pornographic comic books. Why are you so secretive?" Hearing this, Nakiri Arina was even more embarrassed and felt her ears burning. Chapter 119. Do you know the dog author? Got caught red-handed. Arina looked away in panic, looking as if nothing had happened. Then she took a deep breath and suddenly walked up to Zhang Fan. pretending to be calm, and said, "Nonsense, I don't like such pornographic comic books." Hey, understood, I understand everything." Zhang Fan had a strange smile and his eyes were even more cunning seeing him smiling so hatefully. Irina felt both regret and shame, but in fact, Zhang Fan was right at all. She did like to read this kind of comic book. And most of the time, she would hide in the dormitory and watch with blushing eyes. In the end, Irina, who had complicated emotions, couldn't stand this look. In addition, I had to put on a good disguise today, but I never expected that even if I met Zhang Fan unexpectedly, I would still be recognized by him. Helpless, Irina could only glare at him fiercely, and then wanted to lead her secretary Hisako away from here. However, just when she passed by Zhang Fan inadvertently, she saw the bag in Zhang Fan's hand, which seemed to contain several comic books. She stopped, looked at it for a few moments, and then asked in surprise, "This is The Sky of Fate, the original author is a frequent visitor to the Izakaya today. The Izakaya is closed for renovation due to renovations. I don't have anything to do, so I had to come to Akihabara to visit him. I heard that the recent manga and Nosara is quite popular. I think when he first came to the Izakaya, he was still worried whether the manga would be cut in half because of its poor popularity. Now it seems that he has managed to get ahead in the industry." After saying that, Zhang Fan picked up the bag in his hand and continued lightly, "Here. When we were leaving, he specially gave me some original paintings as a gift. Then, when I came out of his place, I happened to see you here." "What? You know the dog author?" When Irina heard this, she was startled at first, and then her eyes lit up instantly, as if she was particularly excited. "Do you like this comic?" Zhang Fan was slightly startled when he saw Irina's expression suddenly changed. I don't like it. I just heard that the dog author likes to draw the most exciting part every time and then suddenly breaks off. It makes me really want to send 1 ton. No, now I want to send 5 tons of blades to him." Have to duplicitous guy. Seeing Irina like this, Zhang Fan felt powerless to complain. That I just look at it occasionally. I knew that because I was too excited just now, I unknowingly expressed my love and hate for this work. Irina's face turned red again. After a while, she came over gently and asked anxiously, "The original painting manuscripts he gave you, do they have the latest plot?" "What are you thinking about? The original drawings must be from before. However, he did give me a latest volume that was just ready to be released to the market from the publishing house." Zhang Fan glanced at Irina, who was about to lose her mind, and responded angrily, "The latest? Is it volume 4, on the side?" Fei Shasha stood up and said. Zhang Fan did not reply, but nodded slightly. "Miss Irina, the last volume of No Sora I bought from the bookstore was the 3rd volume. According to the release date, volume 4 should be available next week. So the comic volume in Zhang Fan's hand is definitely the latest." Fei Shasha, after getting Zhang Fan's affirmation, hurriedly whispered in Irina's ear, "Real, Irina, her heart is full of surprises. Zhang Fan, can you lend me the latest comic book?" Then, Irina's pretty face turned red and her eyes flickered. After all, this was the first time in her life that she was so shameless, reaching out to ask a man to borrow something. Is this an admission? Seeing this, Zhang Fan just smiled. "Admit what?" I won't admit it. I like reading these comic books, Nakari," Irina said coquettishly. She didn't even realize how soft her voice was at this time. "Okay. Don't I know you well?" After saying that, Zhang Fan handed her the Fate of the Sky comic book that had not yet been released on the market from the bag. "Really? Lend it to me." Irina looked at the comic book in front of her, and the corners of her mouth moved slightly. She must be smiling because of this, right? Remember to return it to me after reading it. "Thanks." Irina immediately took the comic book from Zhang Fan and expressed her gratitude to him. Immediately afterwards, she quickly flipped through it, and when she saw the content inside, it turned out to be the latest plot she had never seen before, and her happiness was beyond words. As the birthplace of animation, it is certainly conceivable that Neon Country attaches great importance to this aspect. When you go to Akihabara, you can definitely feel the strong atmosphere of comics, which will penetrate your nostrils and seep into your skin. There are promotional posters for various comics and games on every building. And the shopping guides in every shop selling animation products are also very personable. It seems that the feeling of entering animation can only be truly felt here at this moment. Arena Nakari came out of the comic book store and was quickly attracted by a claw machine on the roadside. All I could see inside the claw machine was the black rabbit doll that the heroine Kasuga no Kyon of Fate no Sora often held in her hand, and these dolls are just so cute that they make Arena Nakari's heart, and she can't wait to take them as her own. Faye. Shang, how can we get out the puppet inside? Arena stopped and pointed at the claw machine and asked. The game of catching dolls is common sense to ordinary people, but for Arena, who couldn't even use a washing machine in the original plot, it was inevitable that she seemed very strange and had no idea how to play. Miss Arena, you need to use money to buy some game coins first, and then insert the coins through this entrance. Then, use the lever and the buttons in the up, down, left, and right directions to operate it. When the time is right, just use the clamp to grab it out. Faye Shasha hurriedly explained. So simple. Arena had some realization. Miss, this game seems simple, but it is actually very difficult to operate. Even if the doll is caught in a clamp, it will suddenly release when the clamp reaches the top, and it will fall vertically, and everything will return to the starting point. Nido Hisako replied. Is that true? Hearing this, Arena's eyes couldn't help but flash. Chapter 120 Fake Cooking, Nakari Alice's Appearance Show. Bang! Finished tossing the coins, Arena's eyes began to sparkle with excitement. She had imagined countless times in her mind the scene of catching that black rabbit doll. Then, she took a deep breath to relax herself. After adjusting the clamp, she moved the lever slightly, trying to move the clamp to the position he wanted. Then she pressed the button and the clamp slowly moved. Seeing this, Nido Hisako, who was next to him, couldn't help but feel nervous and expectant when the clamp approached the doll. Arena's heartbeat almost stopped. She kept staring at the clamp, hoping that it would accurately clamp the doll, but at the moment when the doll was about to be clamped, the clamp suddenly shook and missed its target perfectly. Why can't catch it? Seeing that the doll was not clamped, Arena looked a little frustrated, unwilling to be reconciled. She flipped the coin again, but the result was exactly the same. Then she tried several times in succession, but all ended in failure. At this time, Arena's mood became more and more depressed. When she saw someone around her catching the doll happily, she felt like a failure. Gradually, she began to suspect that she had no talent at all in this area. Finally, she put in 50 coins and caught 50 times. In the end, not even a single doll was caught. Even Zhang Fan couldn't bear to watch this trick of picking up dolls. He stood up and took the initiative to invest one game coin, then shook the joystick while saying, "This kind of rabbit-type doll is actually easy to catch. Just put the clip on the area between your head and body, then tighten it and lift it." After saying that, he pressed the button. The clamp began to move, but unlike Arena, the clamp did not shake at all and clamped the doll accurately. Watching the doll being slowly pulled toward the exit, Arena and Hisako both looked at each other in disbelief. Finally, seeing Zhang Fan successfully catch a black rabbit doll, Faye Shasha couldn't help covering her mouth and said excitedly, "Zhang Fan, it turns out you are so strong in this aspect." On the other hand, Nakari Arena hurriedly picked up the doll. Although it was Zhang Fan who pinched it out, she was reluctant to return it. Certainly as for Zhang Fan, he didn't care. He could see that in her heart, Arena actually liked this kind of doll. Water grape juice, mix the two with each other, add an AA nutrient, boil and put into a bowl. Next, take a sip of grape juice from the syringe and inject it into the attached hose. Let the hose cool in cold water for 3 minutes. Then, take out the cooled tube, reinstall the syringe, and slowly squeeze the noodles in the tube onto the plate. In the process of squeezing the noodles, the trick is to apply force first and then slowly relax. If you use too much force, it will cause spraying and may cause the noodles to break. After that, add AA nutrients to the milk, boil it and pour in the yogurt. Pour the milk and yogurt mixture into a plate and refrigerate. Add 1/4 packet of seal additive to the mango puree, stir, and finally spheroidize according to the steps of making molecular steamed buns. Take out the refrigerated milk and yogurt mixture and add the balled mango puree. In this way, fake noodles and fake poached eggs are completed. What? Real or fake? Using grape juice to make noodles? Using milk to make poached eggs? What kind of food is this? Oh my god, is this the strength of another eldest lady of the Nakari family? It's so scary. At this time, prepare the grape juice noodles and milk poached eggs. Appearing at the venue of the Shikuki duel, all the spectators were deeply shocked. However, the next moment, Alice Nakari, as a contestant, ingeniously served it with a spoonful of salmon roe. In fact, the so-called salmon caviar is not real caviar, but made from tomato paste, which is also gelled in frozen olive oil. Can you imagine? On such a plate of food, not a single thing was real. Snort. How can this weird cuisine be compared with my Black Forest cake? At the cooking table opposite, Hakan Hu, a second-year student in the Department of Higher Education, who had just finished her dessert, said disdainfully, "Senior, if you look down on me, you will suffer a loss." Alice blinked, looking playful. "Don't get too proud too early. You are just a first-year student who wants to challenge our entire Dessert Cuisine Research Association. I think you are very bold. This year, we will continue to recruit new students, and we will use you to establish our prestige." When Bai Yinhu saw that Alice showed no fear, his aura surged and he said with a gloomy face, "Then she presented her finished Black Forest cake to the 5 judges from the Shoji Administration Bureau. Speaking of German desserts, I have to mention the Black Forest cake with a century-old history. The so-called Black Forest cake is because there is a vast and rich forest in the south of Germany because of its mysterious atmosphere. The stories of Snow White and Cinderella in Grimm's fairy tales all happened there. There are towering and straight cedar trees everywhere, and the total forest area is about 6,000 square kilometers. The Black Forest is a tourist attraction in Germany, famous for its cuckoo clocks, Black Forest ham, honey and pork knuckles, and Black Forest cakes. In short, this cake uses a shortbread dough base and combines 3 unique flavors of cherry, cream, and kirsch. Therefore, it has a delicate and mellow taste and has always been regarded as a classic among desserts. When taking the first bite, you will be immediately attracted by the rich chocolate aroma. This aroma contains both the mellow aroma of cocoa butter and a hint of rum. This unique aroma combination seemed to be telling the story of the Black Forest cake to the 5 judges on the stage, making them irresistible. Next, the taste buds of the tongue quickly penetrate the chocolate cake embryo. The taste becomes richer when exposed to the cherries and fresh cream inside. The sweet and sour cherries blend perfectly with the smoothness of the whipped cream to create a unique taste experience. In addition, the cake is dotted with some crunchy walnut kernels, which added nutty aroma and layered texture to the entire cake. At the very bottom, the thin chocolate cake base provides solid support for the entire cake, while also increasing the overall eating experience. The slightly bitter and dense feeling perfectly matches the chocolate cake base and fresh cream on top, which is so refreshing. It's so delicious. Chapter 121. Unexpectedly, the distance between Irina and Zhang Fan is getting closer and closer. 5-0. Finally, as the judging session ended, the whole audience was in a state of excitement. No one could predict such a result, and no one could know that even though the Black Forest cake was so delicious, it still lost to Alice Nakari's molecular gastronomy. "Wow, am I not dazzled, senior?" Sister was instantly stunned. Is her Black Forest cake really incapable of conquering any of the judges? It's over. I originally wanted to join the Dessert Cuisine Research Association, but I was rejected. Well, even 3, 2 or 4, 1 is fine. In the end, it was an exaggerated 5-0. Isn't this a shameful loss? You can leapfrog the challenge just after the beginning of school, and also achieve such a crushing victory that everyone expected. I'm afraid Miss Alice is the freshman closest to the top 10, right? Who knows? Anyway, if you see the 2 eldest ladies of the Nakari family in the future, it's best to stay away. In an instant, everyone present. There was a lot of heated discussion about this first shogi match after the start of school. Of course, most people are more gloating about the fate of the entire Dessert Cuisine Research Association. After all, in the highly competitive Tatsuki, if a research association like this loses one, it may not be a bad thing for them. Why will the Black Forest cake, which I am most proud of, lose? Bai-in, whose face was extremely pale. It was obvious that she could not accept the result of such a disastrous duel. "Senior, if you're not convinced, just eat my food, right?" At this time, the victorious Nakari Alice was not as complacent as usual. Instead, he placed his own food in front of Bai-in. Who the lavender ramen has an attractive luster under the light, as if it is the essence extracted from grape juice, a bright color. Looking carefully, not only is the color attractive, but it also exudes a strong aroma of grapes. The light fruity aroma, fresh and melodious, makes it hard to believe that such ramen is actually made of grape juice, and your heart can't help but be filled with anticipation. Bai-in who gently lift a bunch of noodles, and you can immediately feel its delicacy and elasticity. These noodles are thin and slender, like a string of crystal pearls, which makes people want to put them into their mouths. Finally, She put the noodles into her mouth without hesitation. The first thing you feel is their chewy texture, like little elves dancing on the tip of your tongue. The rich grape aroma spreads in the mouth, followed by a slightly sour and sweet taste after swallowing. A light fruity aroma lingers in your mouth, as if to remind you that what you just tasted is not ramen, but a grape-themed dessert. How could it be? This kind of food, actually, Bayan, who did not express all the feelings in his heart because she knew that the Black Forest cake she had worked so hard to make had indeed lost. The victory has been decided. In accordance with the rules of this Shokugeki competition, I declare that there will be no Dessert Cuisine Research Association from now on. Seeing that Hakenki was completely convinced, Alice Nakari turned around, showed a smile of victory, and then declared loudly to all the people on the stage at this moment. She seemed to have an aura that looked down on the world, perhaps compared to the other eldest lady. This Nakari Alice may not be so scary, but she was able to easily defeat the second-year students, which shows her strength, which should not be underestimated. etc. Do you really want to destroy our research association? Bai Yin, whose face showed a look of horror, followed by a deep regret. If she had known that this would be the outcome, she should not have accepted Alice's halberd challenge in the first place. However, there is no regret medicine in this world. The moment she lost the competition, it meant that the Dessert Cuisine Research Association was destined to be completely wiped out from Totsuki Academy. How could be? Alice's rhetorical question immediately rekindled Hakenhu's hope. I just want to transform the headquarters of your research association into my first laboratory building. Alice came to Bainhu and smiled lightly. No, you can't do this. I beg you, let the Dessert Cuisine Research Association remain. It is because of the hard work of my seniors and I that we can have such a research association. That place has our ideals and our common memories. You can't ruin it. When Bai Yinhu heard this, he immediately knelt down on the ground with all his limbs weak, his eyes full of despair. Afterwards, she clutched Alice's trousers tightly and begged like a poor dog. There is an old saying in China that the winner is the king and the loser is the bandit. I bet my future destiny on this challenge. If I don't have the consciousness to trample everyone under my feet, how can I compete with Arena? After saying that, Alice Nakari shook her feet and left the competition venue with sharp eyes. Demon, our heinous devil, behind him. Bai Yinhu was stunned. It was only then that she realized how terrifying Nakari Alice was, so she kept roaring. But here in Yuanayu, her roar will not make people pity or sympathize. A street in Akihabara Arena, holding a black rabbit doll in her hand, with a smile of satisfaction and pride on her face. Originally, she didn't make this doll, so she had no reason to be so happy about it, but every time she thought about how Zhang Fan was able to take out her favorite doll with only one game coin, she felt an inexplicable sense of joy. Zhang Fan, this doll. Then, Arena put away her excitement and joy and whispered, if you like it, consider it a gift to you. Zhang Fan replied indifferently, oh, thank you, Arena. Her face slightly red, thanked her again. She looked at the doll in her hand and thought of the comic book Zhang Fan had just lent her, and she couldn't help but feel a strange feeling in her heart. Afterwards, she secretly glanced at Zhang Fan. Her bright eyes seemed to have something extra when they met at the Izakaya and the food he cooked. Some of the beliefs she had always held began to waver. What's even more frightening is that as she gets to know him better, the distance between her and Zhang Fan is slowly being narrowed. She once tried to break away from this seemingly fateful arrangement, but there seemed to be a force in the dark that forcibly tied her and Zhang Fan together. Chapter 122. The First Employee. Late at night, a ray of setting sun has long since dissipated. The silvery white moonlight fell on the ground, the stars were as dazzling as diamonds, and everything seemed silent. At this moment, on the balcony on the second floor of the Izakaya, Zhang Fan, who had just returned from Akihabara, was drinking wine leisurely and admiring the beautiful night sky. Perhaps the most interesting thing in the world is pure joy. Although the glass of fruit wine in my hand is not that strong or spicy, the fresh and elegant fruit fragrance can always linger on the tip of my nose. Just sip lightly and you will feel a sense of tranquility. In fact, Zhang Fan is not only a master of winemaking, he also likes to drink. But since traveling to this world, he has rarely shown his drinking side in front of diners. Sometimes, some diners felt bored and wanted to invite him to drink together to make the atmosphere more cheerful, but he declined them one by one. The reason is not that he meant to spoil the fun, or that he was not good at drinking and got drunk easily, but for the chef who runs an izakaya, Alcohol will affect the individual's neurological reactions and judgment, especially when you are tipsy. It is easy to make mistakes when cooking. These mistakes may include incorrect cutting of vegetables, improper seasoning, poor cooking time, inability to properly handle ingredients, etc. Even the pungent smell of wine will further affect the olfactory function, thus greatly changing the quality and taste of the entire dish. Therefore, during this period of time, Zhang Fan never drank. It just happened that the Izakaya was renovated and upgraded today, so he didn't have to cook or entertain diners. So he could drink alone and indulge his boredom a little. Ling Dong. 24 hours have passed and the Izakaya has been upgraded. At this moment, the sudden system sound broke Zhang Fan's calm thoughts. When he heard that the upgrade of the Izakaya was completed, Zhang Fan woke up from his dull mood. Then he hurried to the dining area on the first floor and turned on the lights. The next moment, he was shocked by the brand new scene inside the Izakaya after the upgrade. The first thing that strikes the eye is that the dining experience is centered around the chef's performance. A custom-designed walnut wood counter surrounds the cooking and puts diners in an immersive relationship with the kitchen. The tiles on the floor have all been replaced with brick-sized red travertine tiles. The color changes between each tile create a unique pattern, bringing a strong sense of warmth to the space in the corner. There are new leisure areas and smoking areas as for lighting, in addition to traditional Japanese paper lanterns. Some design chandeliers and wall lamps are also used. Obviously, the redesign of these lights not only fills every corner of the Izakaya with warmth, but also adds an attractive color to the food and drinks. In addition, some independent dining tables are also set up. These tables not only expand the number of diners they can accommodate, but also allow diners to deeply feel the warmth of home when enjoying delicious food here. On the outside, the door design of the antique building and the full floor-to-ceiling glass give people a warm and classical atmosphere. As soon as they stop outside, the original flower garden has been replaced by a zen-like bamboo waterscape, and above the signature light of the round lantern, there is a plaque that reads "Drinking Alone Under the Moon." Even though it only increased by 50 square meters, the size of the Izakaya is still not very large, but the more reasonable spatial layout allows it to accommodate more diners. In short, the upgraded overall style gives people a sense of balance and peace. Details often determine the quality of the entire space, whether it is the decoration on the walls, the laying of the floor, or the addition and placement of tables and chairs. The update of these details makes the upgrade of the Izakaya more perfect, bringing diners a better dining experience. Aren't you dazzled? My Izakaya has changed a lot after the upgrade. It might be fine if strangers come in. Those regular customers who used to come here to drink and dine would be shocked when they see this kind of dining environment, even so. But as long as he looked at this brand new Izakaya from beginning to end, Zhang Fan became more convinced. After the restaurant reopens next time, this kind of decoration and environment will definitely attract more diners to come in and spend money. Ling Dong. Issue. A special mission. The host is asked to successfully recruit an employee within 1 week. After completing the task, he will be rewarded with one special kitchen utensil. It seems that recruiting new employees is urgent. In fact, even if the system did not issue this task, the upgraded Izakaya has increased the number of diners it can accommodate. This already means that it will be difficult for Zhang Fan alone to support the operation of the entire Izakaya in the future. Thinking of this, Zhang Fan couldn't help but sigh deeply. Although there is no shortage of excellent chefs in the world of spirit of the Shokugeki, however, who can be recruited to work for him in a short while? Izakaya is a magical place. It seems to open the door to social seals. The usually strict office workers are full of ugliness here, but all the tastes of life in the city are also found in such a small place, overflowing from the wooden cooking table and the chat and laughter of the chef. Order some snacks and drink some Japanese sake, and the fatigue after a day's work will be slowly relieved by the delicious food. When the sushi that was still warm was swallowed by Kobayashi Gentian in an instant, you can feel that the white and transparent sashimi slices turn into an elegant and amazing taste after chewing, and the subtle mixed taste passed through the small throat and began to fall smoothly into the stomach. The just right sourness after being caressed by the soft skin, as well as the umami taste of rice and raw fish, are constantly filing the tongue while blending in the mouth. As a result, after eating a piece of sushi, Kobayashi Gentian couldn't help but feel refreshed. Well, as expected of Zhang Fan's cooking, this kind of sushi is so delicious when you eat it in one mouthful. The ingredients used are very abundant, especially the crab roe wrapped on the rice. You can feel that they are all processed with seasonal crab roe. The crab roe mixed with the rice explodes in your mouth. The umami flavor and mellow aroma are one bite at a time. The smooth and refreshing taste is simply unstoppable. Kobayashi Gentian. She just sat there quietly, eyes deeply closed in the end. Even if she swallowed the whole sushi, she still felt unsatisfied and intoxicated. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123 Carnivores, a carnival feast of meat. Thump thump thump. I knocked on the table and found that all frequency bands of the sound were very balanced, as warm and smooth as mahogany. Then, when you smell it gently, these wooden things still have a faint aroma. Then use bright eyes to carefully look at all the dining environments around you, and you will find that all places have changed a lot from before. Every corner, after being carefully decorated, has an antique but somewhat modern style, which inevitably makes Kobayashi riot and sigh. This Izakaya is really becoming more and more exquisite. Business owner Zhang, you closed the business last night and renovated the Izakaya. Then, Kobayashi Gentian came back to his senses. His eyes blinked, looking very incredible. As you can see, the decoration effect is not bad, right? When Zhang Fan heard this, he just shrugged and said vaguely. Immediately afterwards, he placed the extra-large bowl of beef rice bowl he had just made in front of her. Good. At first, I almost thought I was in the wrong place. After Kobayashi Gentian finished speaking, he couldn't help but move his nose and smell the aroma of the rice bowl, and replied with a little satisfaction indeed. After some exquisite decoration and upgrades, this Izakaya is refreshing. Not only the various internal dining tables, cooking tables, wall decorations, space layout, etc. have also changed. Rather, it is a new visual effect that is different from the past, which unknowingly brings the chef and the diners closer, making the diners feel more at home. Rice, very fresh and sweet. Beef, very cooked, soft and tender. A mouthful of fragrant beef rice bowl let Kobayashi Gentian instantly feel that the sweetness of rice will be intertwined with the unique milky aroma of beef, forming a wonderful taste impact, and that sense of satisfaction that exceeded expectations began to arise in my heart. This bowl of authentic beef donburi. Involuntarily, Kobayashi Gentian continued to take a bite and started eating. I see. The key lies in the preparation of the sauce, so that a bowl of rice and slices of beef can create a full Japanese flavor. As he spoke, Zhang Ringtong's eyes were filled with excitement and joy. Such a delicious rice bowl started to bring out the greedy food in her stomach. In the end, regardless of whether she looked elegant or not, she directly picked up the bowl with one hand and used her other hand to desperately use chopsticks to pull the beef rice bowl into her mouth. The squeaking sound and the tangy aroma simply make the diners next to you hungry. This unprecedented feeling can be expressed in just one word for Kobayashi Gentian: cool. For carnivores, it doesn't matter whether it's ordinary fat beef rolls or noble Wagyu beef slices. Its fat aroma and taste can actually satisfy all people's imagination of fat and milky aroma. Like the bowl of donburi in front of me, the thin slices of beef are thinly sliced without leaving any residue, and the full texture of each slice really hits the taste buds and teeth of Kobayashi Gentian. And a bite of beef, onions, and rice soaked in soup. Every time she chews it, she can wake up from the salty soup and milky beef, giving the beef bowl an excellent balance of flavor. At the same time, rice has also become a dish called beef rice bowl, which is like a magical needle in the sea. Soon, a whole bowl of super large beef donburi was completely consumed by her. Hiccup. Forget it about sushi. I didn't expect that even the rice bowl would be so delicious. I'm really excited. Touching his belly, Kobayashi Gentian couldn't help but sigh as he thought he was only 3/3 full. Sure enough, the happiest thing in life is to come to an Izakaya when you are hungry and taste the dishes made by Zhang Fan. Then, she blinked and asked curiously, "Shopkeeper Zhang, can you tell me how this special sauce is made?" Everyone has their own way of seasoning sauces. As for my special Japanese sauce, the basic proportions are 30 milliliters Japanese sake, 7 milliliters mirin, 15 grams sugar, 20 milliliters thick soy sauce, 250 milliliters water. Upon hearing this, Ringtong Kobayashi seemed to have an idea. It's a bit close to teriyaki sauce. No, there is a difference. Zhang Fan shook his head and said, there are two ingredients that cannot be ignored, and that is kelp and bonito festival. The reason why we use kelp is because it is rich in glutamic acid, which brings a strong umami flavor. As for glutamic acid, as a chef, you must be familiar with it. The MSG used for daily seasoning in most households is sodium glutamate. It is the main substance of kombu itself that has a strong umami flavor that allows this beef bowl dish to produce a certain umami flavor of seafood. Of course, kombu alone is not enough, you must need another ingredient. Benito, listening to Zhang Fan's explanation, the clever Kobayashi Ryo immediately understood. I remember that the fresh substance of Benito nut is not monosodium glutamate like kelp. It seems to be inosinic acid, right? It's imp, which is inosinic acid, although inosinic acid and glutamate, both are essentially amino acids. It is different from glutamate. Eating inosinic acid alone does not present a very obvious umami taste, but when it is consumed at the same time as glutamate, it can greatly enhance the umami taste of glutamate. This reaction is called taste-presenting nucleotide in the biological world. Therefore, the sauce using kombu and Benito flakes at the same time can achieve the effect of umami 1 + 1 U003E2. Shock. Really? Shocked? After listening to this, Kobayashi Gentian kept stroking his chin with one hand and thinking perhaps most people, including herself, usually focus on the quality of the beef and the texture of the rice when making beef rice bowl, but Zhang Fan is different. While he pays attention to the quality of beef and the taste of rice, he also conducts in-depth research on other less obvious aspects, such as, with various basic ratios of this special sauce, he can play tricks. It's obvious. Learn more about sauce ratios and production. Making this perfect beef bowl dish is a matter of course. The slightly sweet onions in the beef bowl, the salty sauce, the subtle aroma of rice wine. In fact, if you can calm down and reflect carefully, you will find that this classic Japanese-style seasoning has some similarities with the seasoning ideas of many dishes in the Guangdong and Guangdong regions of China. Therefore, when she tasted Kobayashi's Gentian, she did not feel that the seasoning of beef bowl was very different from that of everyday Chinese dishes. Finally, taking another sip of the icy cold sake, the round, smooth, and rich taste made Ringtong Kobayashi feel so good that he felt like he was going to fly. Chapter 124. Haste makes waste. Proportion of repeat customers. The success of a restaurant is always measured, and Izakaya is no exception. This recurring pattern of turning strangers into regular customers, and regular customers into new customers, is exactly a marketing strategy for Izakaya's undeniable regular customers like Kobayashi Gentian. The scale effect it brings also represents the vitality of this Izakaya. If one day, Kobayashi Gentian and other regular customers are no longer interested in the Izakaya run by Zhang Fan, it means that the life of this Izakaya is about to come to an end. Shopkeeper, you are right. Among that group of freshmen, there will always be some amazing talents. Sighing with a breath of alcohol, Kobayashi Ringtong recalled today's Shoji Shogun duel match and couldn't help but sigh. She vaguely remembered that when she was serving as an admissions examiner, she had never seen Alice Nakari in the examination room, so the only explanation that makes sense is that she should have enrolled in UNIU as a special admissions student. However, what was even more unforeseen was that this special student dared to challenge the entire Dessert Cuisine Research Association on just the first day of school. Finally, he was able to beat the shit out of sophomore Hakan Hukoku with an unexpected molecular dessert dish. How didn't I just say last time that the freshman's cooking was very poor? When Zhang Fan heard this, he knew that something happened after school started that irritated Xiaoling Gentian, and couldn't help but ask, it's really all bad? But in UNIU, there is also a special enrollment that can directly avoid the entrance examination. The other eldest lady of the Nakari family enrolled in Tatsuki as a special admissions student, and she stole the show today. Putting down his wine glass, Kobayashi Ringtong began to explain in detail the situation of today's Shokugeki match. Strong competitive spirit. Sometimes, it's just an illusion. What I really cannot accept is my own worthlessness even among all the freshmen. Nakari Alice is definitely at the top level with her current strength, but she wants to win arena too much. This paranoia and desire will make her make wrong judgments on some things, especially the gap between the two in reality, which makes her often feel worried and anxious. Therefore, on the first day of school, she did something that shocked the entire Tatsuki Academy. Haste makes waste. She is too anxious to express herself, and she is afraid that she will suffer backlash later. At this moment, Zhang Fan frowned after hearing about Alice's deeds after school started. Strictly speaking, there is no distinction between good and bad competitiveness, and there is no need to restrain or cultivate it, but she often pursues success too much, pursues too much the victory of a goal, and when she faces failure, that sense of frustration will make her collapse even more. In fact, in Zhang Fan's impression, Alice The concept of winning or losing is not that strong. She competed with Irina because the cake she made when she was a child was not approved by her. She might do more nonsense than Irina in many things, but her frank and sincere character made Zhang Fan admire her very much. After all, she is also the eldest lady of the Nakare family. To get along with her, she must get along much better with Irina. That's right. If you reveal your trump card so quickly now, I'm afraid you will be more easily targeted by other students in the future. How cruel is the competition in Yuanayu? How fierce is it? It seems that a special enrollment student like her who transferred here temporarily has not been able to truly experience it. In response to Zhang Fan's words, she, Kobayashi Gentian, nodded and expressed her approval. However, that wonderful Shokugeki competition, her performance, and her cooking gave Kobayashi Ritsuo a strong feeling. That is, if she is allowed to continue to grow, I am afraid that in the near future, she will completely threaten the status of these 10 heroes. To say that she is the closest to the top 10 is actually not an exaggeration at all. Cool. I haven't been to the Izakaya for a few days. Has everything changed so much now? At this moment, a group of people came to the Izakaya. The person walking at the front was a girl with chestnut brown hair and a bun. As soon as she pushed the door open and walked in, she was stunned by the new dining environment of the Izakaya, and then she couldn't help but her eyes gleaming. Oops. If it weren't for the spring fruit pavilion next door, I would have thought I was in the wrong place. Ryako Sakaki, who followed closely behind, covered her mouth and looked a little surprised. For this Izakaya, she now feels both strange and familiar. Then, Ishiki Wei, Marui Zenji, Imusaki Shun, Aoki Dago, Sato Shoji, and the transfer student Yukiha Isoma. This group of people also came in one after another, especially the stranger Yukiha Isoma. He kept looking at this strange Izakaya with his eyes right after he came and marvel, excited, meditation, confused. The expression on his face began to become extremely complicated. Perhaps for him, who has also run a restaurant, this unique Izakaya has an inexplicable fondness for him. But on the other hand, it was also difficult for him to understand why the boarders and Jixing residents had to come here just to hold a reception to welcome his transfer student. Shopkeeper, these are some biscuits I made myself. Later, Tadakoro, who slowly walked into the Izakaya, gritted his teeth, mustered up his courage, and delivered a box of exquisite biscuits to Zhang Fan with a slightly red face. To Sakuro, you can still come with him. You must have passed the first assessment after the start of school, right? Zhang Fan did not quickly accept the gift, but asked with a smile on his face, this shop owner, I really appreciate you for successfully passing the assessment this time. To Sakuro quickly lowered her head, stretched the biscuit in her hand further in front of Zhang Fan, and replied in an excited tone, why are you thanking me? When Zhang Fan saw this, he pretended to be stupid and asked, shopkeeper, you don't know, the cooking topic of this assessment is actually burgundy red wine beef stew. Fortunately, you told me all the recipes for this dish when we were at the Izakaya, otherwise I might have been kicked out of school. So, in order to express my gratitude to you, I made cookies, and I hope you can accept them. Okay, I appreciate your kindness. In the end, Zhang Fan did not refuse. After all, it would be a bit pretentious to refuse, and seeing him finally accepting the box of biscuits, Tian Sahu couldn't help but feel even happier in her heart. Chapter 125. He is just like his father, incredibly strong. Mandarin fish, that is, Mandarin fish. Many people find the character to be complex and easy to mispronounce, so they simply write it as the character GUI. It has been used for hundreds of years without any mistakes, which shows the wisdom of the people at this time. Take a Mandarin fish, slowly remove scales, internal organs, bloodshot fibers, and fishy membranes. Then with a Dao sound, he used the kitchen knife to cut off the fish head quickly along the fins of the fish's head. In an instant, blood splashed everywhere, and the fish head was completely separated and kept for later use. Then follow the big bone in the middle, press the meat, and use a straight knife to cut into 2/3 of the fish. With equal depth and even distance. What kind of knife technique is this? Ryako Sakuki, who is good at fermented cooking, was stunned when she saw Zhang Fan actually using a very strange knife technique to handle Mandarin fish. Dao technique, yes. Wei narrowed his eyes slightly and smiled. If I remember correctly, this seems to be a very common knife technique in Chinese cuisine. Next to him, Yukihira Soma was slightly thoughtful. He had seen this kind of sword technique from his father, Yukihira Joichiro, right, it's a knife technique unique to Chinese cuisine. Yaisui nodded. In Chinese cuisine not all knife skills can be called cutting. The so-called cutting generally means that the blade of the knife is vertical, the wrist is exerted, and the ingredients are divided evenly from top to bottom. In addition, there are other sword techniques, such as, harder ingredients should be chopped or chopped. For thin, soft, and tough ingredients, you need to lay the blade flat or tilt the knife. This action is called slicing. There is also a technique of cutting but not cutting the food, which is called chuangzhen. Keep watching. I believe that you will understand from his cooking why I told you not to be so eager to show off your strength like Alice Nakiri. Just when Chuangzhen started to figure it out, Isaac, who still kept that faint smile, and said mysteriously, "Oh, Chuangzhen," is a little confused, but he still sat upright obediently and continued to observe Zhang Fan. Afterwards, Dan saw Zhang Fan sprinkle salt, ginger, sugar, cooking wine on the surface of the mandarin fish, and marinate it for 10 minutes to soak the fish with the seasoning. Next, pat all parts of the fish with starch and spread evenly. Apply to every crevice, then tap to shake off excess starch. This step is actually to prevent the high temperature in the subsequent process from hardening the edges of the fish and keeping the fish meat delicate. Wipe the pot dry and pour in an appropriate amount of oil. When it is about 70% hot, add the mandarin fish meat. Fry slowly over low heat for 5 minutes. Take it out and put it on a plate. Empty the pot, add a little oil, then salt, sugar, and white vinegar, and simmer over low heat. Add the water, starch, stir to form a paste. Take out and pour the prepared tomato sauce onto the mandarin fish meat, and sprinkle with pine nuts and green beans. Finally, put the green cabbage leaves, fish heads, and join them into the shape of a squirrel. Zishijiji. As soon as it was served, the hot marinade was poured over the mandarin fish. Because the fish itself is still hot, the marinade on it is also hot, so it makes this squeaking sound instantly. This is the sound of the marinade soaking into the crispy fish meat, and it is also like the sound of a squirrel, especially the whole mandarin fish, which is processed with a knife method. The fish body is more like a blooming chrysanthemum, and the shape is also like a squirrel. If you look closely, you can still see the fish head that was chopped off and then spliced back together, and the fish mouth is open to the sky. Next to the fish head, there are some pine nuts scattered, just like the pine nuts dropped by squirrels after eating them. Such a look is really stunning. It's amazing. This really looks like a squirrel. Even the sound of the marinade pouring down on the fish is very similar. Yoshino Yuki was so frightened by this scene that she screamed. Look at the fish fillets that are connected to each other but still not broken. In fact, it was not just her, but the expressions of everyone present also inevitably changed. When I looked at it just now, I didn't see it clearly. Now that this squirrel mandarin fish is presented, I realized that Zhang Fan's sword cutting skills have actually reached the level of proficiency. Yi Serwei, secretly shocked in his heart. Objectively speaking, the recipe of squirrel mandarin fish is extremely complicated. If the heat is slightly wrong or the color of the marinade is not good, the taste of the entire squirrel mandarin fish will be affected, and the requirements for knife skills have reached a level of harshness. Usually, the body of the mandarin fish needs to be cut dozens of times, and different forces must be used for different parts. Rao is an experienced chef, and he will be sweating profusely after cooking the mandarin fish because when cutting at an angle, the angle between the knife and the fish body cannot be too small, otherwise the rat hair will be too long and appear messy, which is a pity. In other words, this dish not only tests the chef's knife skills, but also tests the chef's ability to blend the 5 flavors, and also considers the chef's ability to control the heat in a timely manner. Therefore, people in the industry know it very well. If you want to make the squirrel mandarin fish dish well, it is not a one-step effort. It takes time to settle down. Shopkeeper, how many knives did you stab? 108. Cuts. Zhang Fan, facing Yi Sehu's question, just shrugged and said softly, clothes. I'm convinced. At this moment, can Isaac say anything more? Even though he was the 7th among the top 10, when he learned that Zhang Fan's flour cutting knife actually reached 108 knives, the sword was precise, and each sword felt like it had been practiced thousands of times. He could only feel that he was inferior. Finally, a few more side dishes were served. The squirrel and mandarin fish placed in the middle suddenly filled the table with brilliance. Well, first of all, congratulations to Tadakoro Wei for successfully passing the first assessment of the semester. After looking around and feeling that the atmosphere was about the same, Isaac held up the teacup and said, "Then, I would like to welcome the transfer student Yukihira Soma as a new member of our Jixing dormitory." After Saying this, he drank a drink with all the boarders present at this point. A reception for the new students of Jixinglio was successfully held in the Izakaya. A sharp aroma of wine with the aroma of mature glutinous rice, the bitter aroma of tea, and the floral aroma of pickled roses. Just take a sip and you will quickly experience the full and soft body of the wine. Moreover, the wine goes from sweet when entering the mouth to bitter when entering the throat, then immediately returns to sweetness, and then produces saliva. The whole process is done in one go. In the mouth, it feels like chewing fresh orange peel. A spiciness develops on the tongue and roof of the mouth, leaving behind a hint of bitterness and a touch of fresh acidity, like the tannins in red wine, but without the astringency. In this teacup, it turns out that it's not the jasmine tea from last time, but tea wine, Ryako. Sakuki tasted it and couldn't help but look at the tea wine in the teacup. I see. Glutinous. Rice is fermented with tea leaves and distiller's yeast. When the fermentation is complete, the distillation method is used to separate and sterilize. This way, the aroma and taste of the tea and the characteristics of the wine are retained, and, strictly speaking, this tea wine can be considered a kind of tea with a flavor of wine, although Zhang Fan used a variety of brewing methods last time to reduce the alcohol content of the wine in the Izakaya without affecting the taste and texture. However, it did happen that some diners got drunk at the same time. In order to satisfy minors, they have the experience of drinking wine in an Izakaya. Zhang Fan brewed this wine-flavored tea in order to brew this fine tea wine. He actually tried all 6 categories of tea and brewed it hundreds of times with various ratios before finally succeeding. Oops, it doesn't matter if it's tea or wine, there are so many dishes. If you don't eat them quickly, you will miss out on a lot of experience if you wait until they are cold before eating them. Yoshino Yuki here is seeing a plate of shiny squirrel mandarin fish. The lines on the back of the fish are clearly visible, and the meat looks very firm. It has been greedy for a long time, so she put down the teacup, couldn't wait to pick up a small mouthful of fish with her chopsticks, and ate it with her mouth wide open. As soon as you enter your mouth, the unique umami flavor spreads. The fish meat is particularly elastic and has a good texture when chewed, and it is still refreshing in the rich marinade. If you pick up a pinch more and eat it in a big mouth, the wonderful taste will be led to the deepest part of your taste. Finally, after swallowing, I felt that the fish was particularly tender and the taste was extremely fresh. The marinade was also sour and sweet, and the texture was crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. It was a masterpiece. The interest was not exhausted, and Yoshino Yuki, who regained her composure for a moment, had no choice but to continue with the next bit of fish. The tenderness of the meat, the freshness of the fish, the superb taste, and the different levels of taste will immediately make people, involuntarily. Yoshino Yuki was stunned for a moment. Even though there are many words in my mind that I want to describe the taste of this squirrel mandarin fish, I really can't come up with them because her consciousness began to gradually become lost, and only the word delicious remained in her mind. As a kung fu dish, it needs to be cut, marinated, powdered, oiled and juiced in one go to determine the taste of the squirrel mandarin fish. The preparation of the soy sauce is the most important, even comparable to the Jidao technique, obviously. The sauce for the squirrel mandarin fish made by most chefs outside restaurants is made with tomato sauce, white sugar, etc. But the mandarin fish marinade made by Zhang Fan should have used boneal sugar. It makes the juice brighter, and plums and lemons are also added to the ingredients as a result. It tastes with distinct textures and full of fruity aroma, and it is even more beautiful when topped with mandarin fish at the end. It's really strange. Why do I have a very familiar feeling when Yukihira Soma also ate squirrel mandarin fish? He vaguely saw the shadow of his father in this dish. He didn't believe in evil, so he had to take another bite. The excellent squirrel mandarin fish first tasted sour from the nose to the mouth, then chewed with the fruity sweetness, and finally the fish itself was sweet and juicy. And this last bite of sweetness actually tests not only the quality of the mandarin fish, but also the marinating action before patting it into powder. With salt as the base, the sweetness can be brought out. Could it be? Shopkeeper, the meat of the mandarin fish is obviously very firm, but why does it need to be refried? Chuangzhen thought of something and couldn't help but ask Zhang Fan. He really deserves to be the son of Yukihira Joichiro, although now, his own strength may not be very good, but because he has run a restaurant with Joichiro for a long time, he knows more about many cuisines than his peer. Zhang Fan sighed slightly, and then replied, as you know, refrying is also a cooking technique in Chinese cuisine. It was the first time I deep-fried the mandarin fish. Although the fish was already cooked, the meat inside was actually very soft. So I continued to deep fry it again to achieve the crispy outside and tender inside. Of course, special attention should be paid to the control of the heat when refrying. If you don't take it out and keep heating it, the fried fish will be old. See, Chuangzhen heard this and nodded. For some reason, he saw Izakaya Gentian and Zhang Fan thinking about it a few days ago. Izakaya used many dirty methods to force him to transfer the Izakaya restaurant, but he was rejected by Soma. However, Izakaya became so angry that he ordered people to smash up the restaurant and destroy all the ingredients in the kitchen. Finally, she asked Soma to cook the food for her to taste. If it satisfied her, it would mean that his cooking skills could indeed support the operation of this Izakaya restaurant. So she gave up, and if she couldn't do that, she would have to sell the Izakaya restaurant to her unconditionally since all the ingredients in the kitchen were destroyed. Izakaya thought he had a winning chance. Unexpectedly, Chuangzhen agreed and successfully made a dish that satisfied her with limited ingredients. I have always had feelings for Izakaya restaurant. His biggest dream is to succeed Izakaya Gentian and take over this restaurant from him, but even as he struggled to keep the restaurant, his father chose to stop business, closed Izakaya's restaurant, and then forced him to enroll in Tatsuki. And such a life plan is not what Chuangzhen wants at all, nor is it a path he is willing to take. Dad, why are you doing this? After carefully recalling the creation of the squirrel and the mandarin fish, I couldn't help but say to myself, indeed, when he first came to UNIU, he was shocked by the scale of this tea house cooking school, and knowing that the talents and abilities of many students here are no worse than his, it is inevitable that he will have the urge to prove himself urgently. In particular, Nakiri Alice's performance in that Shokugeki match further strengthened his idea. However, Yaisui stood up and stopped him. Tell me that his current ability is not enough to fight against everyone in UNIU? Dad, what on earth do I have to do here in Tatsuki to be meaningful? Can I really take over the Izakaya restaurant from you? Clenching his fists, Chuangzhen's eyes looked a little complicated. Soma, what do you think of the strength of this Izakaya owner? Looking at Soma, who was deep in thought because of this squirrel and mandarin fish dish, Ishikiwei asked with a chuckle, powerful, really strong. I can feel the pressure from my father on him. Create truth without thinking. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.